Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs, I welcome you all to the second ICWA Young Scholars Conference on the theme India on the Rise, Foreign Policy in the Amrit Kaal. The conference sees the participation of scholars from the length and breadth of this country to discuss on how India's foreign policy will address the Amrit Kaal period and contribute to the vision of a developed nation by 2047. We will begin our program with welcome remarks by Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, Additional Secretary, Indian Council of World Affairs, New Delhi. It is also our privilege to welcome Professor Santishree Dhulipudi Pandit, Vice Chancellor, Jawaharlal Nehru University. Professor Pandit is the first woman and alumni vice chancellor of the university, and in a distinguished career of 3.5 decades, she has taught and led research at the University of Pune and Goa and has published numerous books and research articles. She is well known for her support for student activities and youth-related programs, and we are grateful for her presence here at the Council today. Now may I request Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, Additional Secretary, Indian Council of World Affairs, to kindly make her welcome remarks.
Vice Chancellor JNU, Professor Santishree Dhulipudi Panditji, scholars of international relations and friends. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the second edition of the ICWA Young Scholars Conference on the theme India on the Rise, Foreign Policy in the Amrit Kaal. You would recall that during his address on the occasion of the 77th Independence Day in 2023, Prime Minister Narendra Modi outlined the goal of a developed India, Viksit Bharat at 2047, when the nation celebrates its centenary of freedom from colonialism. He also labeled the period of 25 years, a quarter of a century, till 2047 from now as Amrit Kaal, the period when the nectar of life flows. He said that this period will not only be a period of national development, but also an occasion when the country will play an important role in giving direction to the world. Dear students, what is Amrit Kaal? You are aware that the world today is going through heightened uncertainty and intense geopolitics. The world is ridden with conflicts and deep polarization. The Indo-Pacific theater is rife with tensions surrounding the South China Sea, dispute, the Taiwan Strait, and the Korean Peninsula. Great power rivalry is adversely impacting the peace and stability of the Indo-Pacific from the Pacific Island countries to the Western Indian Ocean. The Ukraine war and the Gaza conflict have brought to light the infirmities of the liberal international order, the weaknesses in it. There is instability in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Syria, Yemen, and Sahel. European security, political and social order is in a state of flux. It is amidst navigating this global churn that each country has to ask itself how to position itself, how to maximize its space for maneuver, how to draw advantage in order to best serve the well-being of its people. And this is, in no less measure, true for India, the world's most populated country. The state of the world today, you would have noticed, is being widely and variously described as global tumult, global turmoil, global turbulence, global ferment, or global churn. Amongst these, the phrase global churn suits the Indian mindset best, for it aligns with the Samudra Manthan of Hindu mythology, which symbolizes the churn in the ocean, or the churn between the good and the evil, between the gods and demons, between the positive and negative forces to release Amrit, or nectar of life, the nectar of improved living. It is for this reason that Prime Minister Modi named this period Amrit Kaal, when India will strive to grow and redefine its destiny amidst the intense geopolitical churn in the world by riding on the positive and confronting and relegating to oblivion the negative. As we observe tectonic shifts in global geopolitics At ICWA, we're also talking about the emergence of a new world order. How do we take advantage of the current shifts in the world to craft an order where power and responsibility is more distributed, where the options available to the weakest are maximized, which is people-centric, where neither the relations between countries and peoples nor interpersonal relations are weaponized, where there is harmony, tolerance, coexistence, and where there is long-term stability and predictability. Hindu philosophy talks of creation alongside dissolution, and it is here that we will find our answers. Talking about a rising in India, the Minister for External Affairs, Dr. S. Jaishankar, in his speech to the United Nations General Assembly in 2023 said that, "We in India have never seen that as being in contradiction with global good. When we aspire to be a leading power, this is not for self-aggrandizement, but to take on greater responsibility and make more contributions. The goals we have set for ourselves will make us different from all those whose rise preceded ours." Unquote. Friends, I would like to make two propositions here. One, when India rises, India will not rise alone. In this lies the difference between, say, the rise in the past of the OECD economic powerhouses or the current rise of China and the rise of India. The fruits of the growth of the OECD economic powerhouses largely remained concentrated in them alone. They could not, for instance, prove to be a locomotive for the global South's upliftment, but rather resulted in increased disparities in the world. China's rise, the other example, is seen as aggressive by some, a threat by others, but a challenge by all. India's rise, however, is seen as being in harmony with the world. Given its size, population, and civilizational ethos, India's rise itself is a global good, which has the potential of uplifting the lives of not only its citizens, but also of the people of its partner countries through its willingness to share its strengths in various areas such as economy, development assistance, humanitarian assistance, capacity building, and governance. And this sharing of strengths has been and will be irrespective of ideology, religion, or political system of the partner country. The second proposition that I would like to make is, as India rises, a new world order will emerge. The two are coterminous with each other. The Amrit Kaal will witness both these trends, the emergence of a new world order and the rise of India. In the Amrit Kaal, as India rises, new institutions will emerge domestically to support its rise, while some old institutions at home may have to reform or risk becoming defunct. New habits in governance will be adopted, and we will have to let go of all those which pull us down. Likewise, as the new world order emerges, new global institutions may come up to support this emergence, while existing institutions, especially of global governance, will have to reform or risk becoming irrelevant. New habits in diplomacy will have to be adopted, while we will have to let go of all that is negative that we are witnessing today. India's rise and the emergence of a new world order both will be accompanied by adoption of new norms and the redefining of goals. We will have to change the culture of lack into a culture of abundance or sufficiency at the very least. Needless to add, India's rise is being facilitated by an enabling foreign policy. The contrary can't be true, and this will have to continue. The foundation of India's foreign policy is to work towards achieving self-reliance in domestic and foreign affairs, which is emphasized through the idea of strategic autonomy and the objective of Atmanirbharta or self-dependence. Our cultural and historical experiences, our history of diversity and coexistence have shaped our traditions of statecraft, our approach to governance and diplomacy. India has emphasized its internationalism, ensconced in the phrase Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, the world is a family, and will continue to engage with the world accordingly. India's history shows that neither does it follow a winner-takes-all approach to contestations, nor is there a belief that the end justifies the means. While striving for justice, peace, and freedom for all nations, India's foreign policy will continue to advance the interests of its people and will evolve as required over the Amrit Kaal. It is to discuss these issues and to explore what young minds think about them that we are holding this second ICWA Young Scholars Conference. We have with us both PhD candidates and postdoctoral research scholars from across India who will be presenting their papers on Indian foreign policy and changing geopolitics, on India as a net security provider, and on India as a development partner. From North India, we have scholars from University of Jammu, Central University of Himachal Pradesh Dharamshala, University of Allahabad Prayagraj. From East India, we have scholars from Nehru Shillong and University of South Bihar Gaya. From the South, from Mahatma Gandhi University Kottayam and Manipal Academy of Higher Education Karnataka. From the West and Central India, we are joined by scholars from Central University of Gujarat, Vadodara, and from Dr. Hari Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya Sagar. We also have discussants and participants from universities based in Delhi NCR. Dear scholars, it is in your lifetime and during your careers that these momentous changes that I just talked about will take place. You are the torch bearers of Amrit Kaal. Now, I would like to give the floor to Madam Vice Chancellor. As the first woman Vice Chancellor of Jawaharlal Nehru University, with a teaching and research career spanning more than 3.5 decades, marked by several accomplishments, it is our privilege to have you deliver the keynote address today. The scholars will immensely benefit from your guidance. Madam, the floor is yours.
Good morning to all of you. Let me, respected Srimati Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, and dear young scholars here, and Stuti Banerjee, who's been, Mukherjee I write, huh? Banerjee, am I right? Okay. Thank you so much for inviting me. This has indeed made me nostalgic, because as a student of JNU, about some 35, 40 years back, I used to come to ICWA with the JNU bus. And this was my adda every other day. And it was not so well furnished, madam, in our time. And so it is very nostalgic. I thank you for inviting me back, though I'm part of your governing council as the Vice Chancellor. I'm also very happy to be here because the External Affairs Minister is also an alumnus of the very school I am from, SIS, School of International Studies. And School of International Studies began here. Do you know we are celebrating 70 years of SIS, and it began in this very building by Hidaynath Kunzuru and Dr. Appadurai. So many things have come together, and I'm happy that you're having the second Young Scholars Meet. And as you rightly said, madam, they are the future of India. A very interesting topic that has been given to all of you, and I think you will have better ideas than most of us here today. I'm happy to be here to give some ideas of whatever I would be thinking on India's rise, foreign policy in the Amrit Kaal. I would rather say that the Amrit Kaal is a vision for a transformed India. India's foreign policy in the Amrit Kaal 2025, let's say 5 to 2047, represents a shift towards establishing itself as a Vikasit Bharat, or a developed India, by the centenary of its independence. The phase is not just about domestic transformation, but about asserting India's leadership globally. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has outlined that this era will see India not just as an economic powerhouse, but also as a thought leader, shaping global governance. Global responsibility and leadership. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar emphasized that India's aspirations to be a leading power are not about dominance, but about shouldering greater responsibilities in international affairs. India is committed to contributing to a more inclusive, just, and rules-based international order. Internal strength as a foundation for external influence. India's rising economy, technology progress, military modernization, and cultural resurgence provide the foundation for its expanded global role. Strategic goals. India's aim to position itself as a stabilizing force in a world facing geopolitical disruptions, economic uncertainty, and an environmental crisis. I would go into the idea that you are dealing with initially, that is strategic autonomy in a multipolar world. India's approach to global affairs is shaped by strategic autonomy, maintaining independent decision-making while engaging with multiple power centers. This ensures India does not get entangled in bloc politics, but actively influences global governance. In this, the first is multi-alignment without independence. India has deepened relations with the United States of America in defense, technology, and trade, while maintaining strong ties with Russia for energy security and military hardware. 2, engagement with the global South. India has positioned itself as the voice of the global South, advocating for equitable development, fairer financial structures, and climate justice through forums of the G20 and BRICS. 3, proximity to key trade and energy routes. India's geopolitical location near vital shipping lanes, such as the Strait of Malacca and the Indian Ocean, enhances its role as a logistics hub for global trade. And 4, I would say leadership in crisis response. India has been the first responder in humanitarian crisis, including evacuation missions in Afghanistan, Ukraine, medical aid to disaster-struck nations, and peacekeeping efforts in Africa. I would see the second pillar as economic diplomacy, India as a global growth engine. India's economic diplomacy is a pillar of its foreign policy, with its economy projected to be the world's third largest by 2030 and reaching $10 trillion by 2047. Under this, I would like to stress reforming global trade institutions. India has actively pushed for reforms in WTO and IMF to ensure developing economies get a fair voice in decision-making. Number 2, expanding FTAs. India's trade agreements with the UAE, CEPA, the EU, the UK, and Canada are aimed in diversifying its economic partnerships. 3, supply chain diversification. The India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, IMEC, is a key initiative to counter over-reliance on China. India is also a key participant in the Indo-Pacific framework, promoting secure and resilient supply chains. 4, digital public infrastructure, DPI. India's digital advancements, including UPI, Aadhaar, and ONDC, are being exported to developing economies, reinforcing its leadership in the global fintech and governance sectors. Startup ecosystem. India's burgeoning startup culture and unicorn companies in AI, green tech, and cybersecurity position it as a global innovation hub. The third problem that I would look at is India as a security provider from the Indian Ocean to the Indo-Pacific. India's security strategy is evolving beyond the self-defense to regional and global security contributions, reinforcing its image as a net security provider. Here I would look upon maritime security and countering China. Here I would also see that we bridge tradition with modernity, see how the Cholas occupied Southeast Asia and challenged China. It is very necessary that most of you should read the way the Chola Empire was a great maritime power in Southeast Asia. They did not do conquering by plunder, rape, but rather by trade and commerce. So this is an alternate model also of global governance. So the Quad, India, US, Japan, Australia, is central to ensuring a free Indo-Pacific and curbing aggressive expansionism. Sagar Doctrine, security and growth for all in the region. India is strengthening ties with Mauritius, Maldives, Seychelles to enhance Indian Ocean security. Defense exports and indigenous capabilities. India's military-industrial expansion includes Tejas jets for Argentina, BrahMos missiles for the Philippines, and the naval defense technology for Southeast Asia. Cyber security and emerging threats. India is collaborating with global partners to address cyber warfare, artificial intelligence threats, and quantum computing security challenges. As rightly mentioned by your additional Secretary General, I think the India and the Middle East or West Asia, Europe corridor is very important. IMEC announced at the G20 summit is a landmark initiative positioning India as a strategic transit hub, alternative to China's BRI. IMEC counters China's debt trap diplomacy by offering transparent and sustainable trade connectivity. Enhancing Gulf partnerships. India's growing ties with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Israel ensure energy security and greater economic investments. Strengthening Europe-Asia trade linkages, the corridor improves connectivity between South Asia, the Gulf, and Europe, fostering long-term economic integration. India's climate and energy leadership. India's leadership in climate action is becoming a defining feature of its foreign policy. International Solar Alliance co-founded ISA to promote global solar energy adoption, particularly in Africa and Asia. National Green Hydrogen Mission. India aims to be a global leader in green hydrogen production, reducing reliance on fossil fuels. G20 climate leadership. As G20 President, India pushed for fair climate finance mechanisms, ensuring that developing nations receive equitable support for their energy transitions. Soft power and cultural diplomacy. India's cultural and humanitarian diplomacy is a key instrument in strengthening its global partnerships. Bollywood and Tollywood and OTT influence. Indian films and digital content are gaining significant traction worldwide, shaping global cultural narratives. Yoga, Ayurveda, and cultural exchanges. International Yoga Day, supported by over 190 nations, is a testament to India's growing soft power. Diaspora engagement. The 32 million strong Indian diaspora, supported by over 100, is seen as an asset in strengthening India's influence in the US, Canada, UK, and the Gulf. Vaccine Maitri. India's pandemic response, delivering over 200 million vaccine doses to developing nations, positioned it as not only as a humanitarian leader, but as the pharmacy of the world. Women leadership in foreign policy. India's Nari Shakti, women's power, is redefining its foreign policy landscape. Good to see a few women, though you look to be less than the men, but it's good to see quite a number. Leading women in diplomacy, we also have one with us on the stage. We Indian women diplomats, including UN Permanent Representative earlier, Ruchira Kamboj, are shaping global governance. Gender equality in foreign policy. India is actively promoting gender-sensitive policies in multilateral organizations, pushing for women's representation in global leadership. India and the reform of global governance. India is playing a pivotal role in reforming global institutions to reflect 21st century realities. UN Security Council reform. India is advocating for a permanent seat in the United Nations Security Council, emphasizing the need for more representative global leadership. BRICS and G20 leadership. India is ensuring that these platforms address concerns of the global south and promote inclusive economic policies. Fairer financial structures. India is championing reforms in IMF and World Bank to make financial assistance more accessible to developing countries. Leadership in AI regulations. In the new dawn of AI, India is among the few nations that is taking leadership in developing on its scope and limitations. Finally, I want to have a few questions to you young scholars. The road ahead, India in 2047, how would you see it? I would see it in these few things before you can maybe add on to it or even may not agree with me. One, in its centenary, India envisions itself as a 10 trillion economy with leadership in AI, quantum computing, and space technology. Two, a key architect of a new global order, balancing power dynamics while maintaining strategic autonomy. A sustainability champion, leading green technology innovations and equitable climate solutions. Four, a global cultural and knowledge hub, exporting its intellectual, technological, and ethical leadership to the world. I would only conclude saying that India's Amrit Kaal is not just a domestic transformation, but a global renaissance. Over the next 2 decades, India is set to transition from a rising power to a leading power, shaping the 21st century in its image, driven by economic strength, technological innovation, security contributions, and cultural influence. In cultural influence, I would like to tell you that India has an alternative vision, because India and China are not nation states, but civilization states. And civilization states are totally different from the way you look at nation states. And India, I would call it not an Indic civilization, but a dharmic civilization. Dharma is a way of life. Dharma is not faith or religion. In English is inadequate in its translation. So please Sanskritize English. Dharma is Dharma. India's foreign policy is a dynamic interplay of tradition and modernity, blending its civilizational ethos with pragmatic global strategies. And here I would like you to draw your attention to the 5 pillars that Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave as Panchamrit. Sanman, meaning dignity and honor for all, and India as a world power. Samvad, underlining the need for engagement and dialogue to discuss problems and resolve differences. Samruddhi, reflecting the desire for shared prosperity for the people of India and the world. Suraksha, underscoring the interlinkages between national, regional, and global security, including human security. Security is not just military security. Sanskriti and Sabhyata, that emphasizes the commitment to remain, to one's own culture and the dharmic civilization state that India is, and yet underlining the idea of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the world is a family, human and all other living and non-living things in the cosmos have to live in harmony. We are the only civilization state that believes that chaos leads to creativity. The Abrahamic religions believe that order is important. We are not very worried about disorder because we think it leads to creativity, and hence that is why I'm saying We don't look at the world in binaries. That is, if you're not with God, you're not with Satan. For us, the world is in concentric circles. There are a lot of gray areas. We don't live in an either or world. So I would like to stress this. One is Ravana is not a villain. He's an anti-hero. He had one fault. So please don't see it like the Western, that if you're a hero, one has to be a villain. And also, finally, I would end. I think the women here would like. India is the only civilization state that's a feminist civilization. You will ask me, how are you saying it, madam? Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava. First is Matru. And who held the most powerful portfolios in Indira's cabinet? Power was with women. Saraswati, knowledge. Whether you say power is knowledge or knowledge is power. Saraswati, she redefined womanhood as well. Mahalakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity. And Durga, the goddess of power. You celebrate Dashara, Navratra, when all the male gods lost. It was the feminine power that, vanquished the evil. So we celebrate feminine power. And all the male gods are named after their wives. It is not the other way about. Lakshmi Pati, Sita Pati, Uma Pati. There is no Patni concept. So be proud of this civilization state. And we also have LGBT. Read the Mahabharat. All of you will know it. So I would only say that the road ahead is excellent, full of ideas. I look upon to you young people to build narratives, new narratives. Please don't ape the Anglo-American narratives. They are good. They have done it well. They have done their job. Now it is your duty as young scholars to build new narratives from your own cultural traditions, tribal, whatever it is. We celebrate cultural diversity like no one else. We have 3,000 crores of gods. You can be an agnostic and still a Hindu. So please take from your local traditions, build narratives. These narratives will enrich international relations for all, as well as India as a rising power. Thank you very much. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you so much, ma'am. On behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs, it is indeed my honor and privilege to express our gratitude to Professor Pandit, Vice Chancellor, Jawaharlal Nehru University, for taking the time out from her very busy schedule to deliver this keynote address and to give us the insight onto how India is going to rise in the next 25 years. With this, we come to the end of the inaugural session. May I request our participants, we see ma'am, and our two chairs who are present here, Dr. Mishra and Captain Sharma, to join us for a group photograph in the foyer stairs. Thank you so much. Geopolitics, I would request our chair, Dr. Atul Mishra, Associate Professor and Head of Department, School of Humanities and Social Sciences, Shiv Nadar University, Noida, to kindly conduct the proceedings.
Thank you, Stuti, and good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. Thank you for the invitation. ICWA has been very generous in terms of the traffic that it encourages from Shiv Nadar, so I'm very, very glad to be here. This is the first session. What I thought I'd do is very briefly sort of set out three sets of remarks on contemporary geopolitics as partly a provocation to our PhD scholars as they mull their papers, and then we'll jump right into. I understand there are only two presentations on this panel, so, well, you're lucky. You'll get a little more time than your colleagues on other panels will, so make sure you make the most of it. Okay, three sets of remarks very briefly. One is with regard to the change in the meaning of geopolitics itself. When the term was coined in the early 20th century, 1900s actually to be more specific, geopolitics referred to the impact that geography had on the patterns of politics and international relations. In a world where states were both states, they were also turning into nation states, but also very often had features of empires. So that's how, that was the constitutive meaning, the originary meaning of geopolitics. But in the aftermath of the Second World War and during the Cold War, the meaning shifts to the machinations, the games, and the struggle for power and influence amongst the great powers. And it is this second meaning that is now associated with the term geopolitics. And I think the reason I mention this is for students who are interested and who work with the term geopolitics very often, it's important to understand why, what that term means, and also ask yourself as to why that conceptual shift has taken place in the meaning of the term itself. The second thing that I want to emphasize is the role of hard capabilities, military capabilities fundamentally, but also the role of other capabilities that can potentially become the basis of military capabilities, which is wealth and technological resources. The central role that they play in geopolitics. And this matters for those of us who study foreign policy as well as international relations. I'm making that analytical distinction deliberately. It matters to the study of foreign policy because when you're thinking about any country's foreign policy, pay very close attention to what the capability matrix is looking like for that particular country. But also when you're analyzing geopolitics in terms of international relations, pay very close attention to the power equilibrium within which a particular country is thinking about its geopolitics. So that's the second set of reflections. The final set is with regard to the international environment or the geopolitical environment that India has been dealing with and the change that has come about over there. Roughly speaking, the past 25 years, India has enjoyed a rather favorable geopolitical environment. And what I mean by that is that the macro picture for India has been shaped by a convergence with the United States over the rise of China, and that has translated into, for a very, very long time, the reliability of the United States to India's rise in general, and also the management of bilateral relations in particular with China. On the other hand, the United States has considered India useful, initially in terms of market access, secondly in terms of its own ambition vis-a-vis China. But also over a period of time, the portfolio has kind of diversified, and we've sort of now worked with the United States very closely over questions of sustainability, development, and so on and so forth, critical and emerging technologies. I want to say that this environment is changing, and it's changing quite rapidly, and it is not Delhi's fault, right? This is happening because under Donald Trump 2.0, the very orientation, the geopolitical orientation of the United States is changing. It is no longer positioning itself as a hegemon that is willing to bear the security burden of its allies. And by virtue of that, the fate that has befallen Europe, there's no reason why that logic should not be extended to Asia. And if that logic is extended to Asia, then everyone from Japan to South Korea to Taiwan to Australia should feel the pressure. India has never been dependent on the United States for its security concern, but American power has acted as a backstop to India's dealings with China. And that backstop may not be available. So the reliability element that I talked to you about earlier, that has now come under question. Things can get worse. Things can get worse if the possibility that the model of geopolitics that Trump has in store, that has a preference for vis-a-vis America's own sphere, is extended to China as well. So consider the possibility that instead of America acting as a global hegemon, it believes in a great power leadership-based understanding of dividing the world into 3 spheres of influence. It's not as far-fetched as it sounds. And were that to happen, you'd essentially have an Asia that is dominated by China. And in that setup, India's complications increase manyfold. And there'll be greater emphasis, therefore, on India's military capabilities, economic capabilities, and technological capabilities. So those roughly are the factors that I wanted to sort of place before our presenters, who are going to be talking about geopolitics more centrally. Over to the first presentation. This is Abhigya Lange, India's foreign policy in contemporary times, navigating the ideals of 3 V's. I'm very interested into what the V's are. Over to you.
Okay. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Abhigya Lange. I'm from Central University of Jammu. Presently, I'm working on India-China border dispute with Ladakh as my main forte. A small introduction. So I have done my graduation and master's from Delhi University. Before I was there with Vivekananda International Foundation for some time. Then I joined Madras University for my MPhil. And then I was working with a Noida-based journal as a sub-editor for some time. And then I joined my PhD. So coming back to my topic, my presentation should be working, no? Huh? Okay. Great. So I have taken India's foreign policy in contemporary times, navigating the three V's. 3 V's is Vishwaguru, Vishwamitra, and Viksit Bharat. The 3 main contemporary topics under which everything is being fallen into. When we talk about the Indian foreign policy, first of all, the global order is continuously changing. There's a profound transformation driven by decline of unipolarity and the emergence of more fragmented and competitive multipolar system. The US, while still being a dominant player, and please put, I have put this word dominant player because it's not hegemonic anymore. There are more players nowadays coming, more regional powers are coming into forefront. Faces an increasing pushback from more assertive China and a resurgent Russia as well. Simultaneously, there's an erosion of multilateral framework. There's more rise of regionalism, reassertion of nationalist and protectionist policies are challenging the post-Cold War liberal order. And for this, India is also evolving and revolving its foreign policy around the new concepts that are coming up. So when we talk about these things, we come to the 3 main framework that are coming into foreline for India. That is Vishwaguru. We use soft power policy, which is based on civilizational effects. I've been working on the domestic perspective for almost all the research works and papers that I write about. So when we talk about soft power, we just not talk about the civilizational roots. We also about what is the local perspective of the issues that come up. Supposedly, if it's a border issue, how Ladakhi sees it, and how those perspectives from the local are transforming the Indian foreign policy towards the international and national forums. When we talk about Vishwamitra, we are taking into consideration the international partnership and multilateralism as one of the main concepts. When we talk about Viksit Bharat, domestic policies are very much an important tool for us to grow globally as well. If domestically we are not stronger, we can't be on forefront as a global or a regional power. When we talk about the soft power civilizational identity, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, like ma'am mentioned, the world is one family, is one of the main themes of the guiding principle. India's civilizational has always emphasized on peace, soft power, negotiation and talks rather than using hard power, although we have seen a dramatic change towards an inclination towards getting into hard power as well. Cultural diplomacy, which is like Yoga International Day, has been celebrated in the last so many years, with 177 countries being participated. Indian Council of Cultural Affairs has been promoting cultural activities across the world. Also, diasporas have been creating more cultural activities for people, to even for people for whom they are abroad and they want to be still attached to their cultural heritages. Then there's educational outreach. There are many multi scholarship programs and technical training programs which are taking place. In platforms, we have already seen G20 as a presidential, it was a presidential platform for India, and we've showcased that how not only as a global representative but a South-South representative, how well we can do. When we talk about Vishwamitras, we talk about there's a collaborative relationship, or as a trusted development partner. We've been, especially with the smaller countries that are there regionally or internationally, we've been trusted with a lot of decisions. There is an increase in partnership with South Africa among any other nations. South-South cooperation, as mentioned before, we've been as a South-South representative. Humanitarian diplomacy, vaccine Maitri, which was one of the most solid campaigns that India had during the COVID period. We domestically did not only domestically, but internationally, we were helping out all the partners that we have more focus on forums like Quad for the security and supply and disaster relief between the countries. Climatic leadership, we've also been focusing on the climate change that is happening, especially in the areas of Himalayas and the states and the countries which are being affected collectively. We are coming up with policies where we can collaborate and work together. Then we talk about Viksit Bharat. Economy has been one of the forefront for us. We are working towards it, building it, making it bigger. We also talks about internal security concerns, with border tensions being there in the Ladakh and Arunachal Pradesh as a constant dilemma for us. We've been concentrating all those things as well through infrastructure development and coming up with civil projects as well, where local population has been working with the local governments to put forward a better development in those areas. Self-reliance and economic strategy, Atmanirbhar Bharat is one of the most important policies that we are following for not just one aspect, but for all the aspects altogether. Challenges to India's we first is that BRI has been one of the most important policies for China, and they are re-establishing their norms and principles altogether. In the last year, we have seen they have put forward new initiatives into it. Complex dynamics in Afghanistan post-US withdrawal, especially when I come from a state where we have been, we touch both the side of the borders. It becomes very important for us to make sure these challenges, especially when it comes to the foreign policy, are altogether answered through these. There has been a decline in 161 World Press Freedom Index, so we need to see into that aspect as well. Violation and press minority rights violation is there, so we need to focus on those things as well. Environmental concerns, especially in the Trans-Himalayan region like Ladakh, has been one of the major aspects which have been in forefront, so we need to focus on that as well. Development takes only place when environment is also considered into all the aspects and policies. We need to look forward into the development can only take place when the domestic policies and domestic policies and initiatives are stronger. Then only we can come up with a stronger forefront and a stronger strategic imperatives in the international order as well. So border dispute with Pakistan and China through diplomacy needs to be solved and taken care of. Economic and technological innovations is one of the two things that need a focus on, especially AI and data sciences, as they are growing so much in power. promote democratic integrity and global soft power. India has always been a soft power, so why not use the cultural initiatives to make it more stronger? Diplomatic partnership across global South and global North. We can be one of the links that bring together the global South and global North, also bring together the global South altogether. Advocate UN reforms and permanent seat as UNSC seat, which is one of the main principles that we are looking forward and putting out in all the meetings that have been happening all over the world in the last 2-3 years. So that's also one of the agenda that need to be followed. Then we need to have more investment in green hydrogen and renewable energy resources, and climate change and climate commitment also needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhigya. This was rich. This was empirically very rich and also quite comprehensive. What I thought we'd do is we'll do the second presentation as well, and then we'll open the Q&A. Does that work? Okay. Our second speaker is Dipannita Maria Bag. She is a research scholar at the Department of Political Science at Nehru, and her presentation is going to be on India's role in shaping international norms during Amrit Kaal, navigating multipolarity and global governance. Dipannita, yours.
Thank you so much. I'll directly move ahead with the presentation. So I don't have a PPT. So order as we see it is considered to be a very disorderly idea, an idea that, something that has been reflected in the inaugural lecture. The very concept of this can be difficult to define given multiple challenges to the structures and institutions that constitute international order. As the 21st century progresses towards a multipolar world order, India stands at a pivotal moment in its journey towards becoming a developed nation by 2047, the centenary of its independence. Now this period, the Amrit Kaal, presents both significant challenges and unprecedented opportunities for India to shape global governance and norm-making while pursuing its domestic transformation. India consistently advocates for adherence to international law, peaceful resolution of disputes, and multilateral cooperation through dialogue and negotiations. This principled stance enhances India's reputation as a responsible power that contributes to global stability. India's extensive participation in UN peacekeeping operations, support for international agreements, and advocacy for reformed multilateralism reflects its commitment to a rules-based international system that accommodates diverse perspectives. The global challenges facing India are, geopolitical, economic, and most importantly, pertaining to the observance of norms and global governance. This includes great power competition, violation of norms and practices, raising traditional and non-traditional security concerns, navigating the intensifying rivalry between great powers, which requires maintaining strategic autonomy and addressing regional security concerns. This includes maritime security, terrorism, and non-traditional security threats. The economic challenges, including trade protectionism, supply chain vulnerabilities, access to technologies, and minimizing economic disparities, are some of the challenges that India needs to address globally, but more importantly also at home. However, more pressing issues concerning reforming multilateral institutions and addressing climate change, pandemic preparedness, and extending facilities of digital governance to all. So how can India's 2047 Amrit Kaal vision be inward-looking in realizing this if they are attached to the global concerns as well? India has to chart a vision to meet its domestic and foreign policy commitments through strategic autonomy, enabling it to maintain balanced relationships with competing powers, avoid entanglement in great power rivalry, and pursue policies aligned with its national interest, allowing India to be viewed as an independent actor. By engaging with diverse partners across ideological and geographic divides, India positions itself as a bridging power, providing its control over a multilateral and multi-vector approach. This will diversify India's strategic partnerships to reduce vulnerabilities, maintain relationship with competing powers, and create space for diplomatic maneuvering in complex situations. building credibility as a balanced and reliable partner. This also enables India to commit to its role in rules-based international order. India's consistent advocacy for international law and seeking solutions through dialogue to global challenges enhances its reputation as a responsible stakeholder. This commitment is demonstrated through its ongoing support again, as I mentioned previously, advocacy for peaceful dispute resolution and promotion of inclusive global governance structures. But more work again needs to be done, including advocacy for strengthening solidarity among the global south. India has time and again in the past global south concerns, supporting for South-South cooperation frameworks and advocacy for equitable climate finance and technology transfers, and championing development models that reflect diverse national circumstances. This impacts India's image again as a credible representative. The paper, it goes on to expand on the potentials of developing, harnessing relations in social development, economic growth, technological advancement, reforms in international institutions, climate actions, contributions in norm making, and development with dignity. For this, I'll just expand on the portions of norm making. India has made significant contributions to international and governance in norm making, playing a crucial role in shaping global policies and frameworks. As a founding member of the UN, India has been actively involved in peacekeeping missions and has consistently advocated for rights of developing nations. India's commitment to multilateralism is evident through its participation in various international organizations, including the WTO, the G20, where it has influenced trade negotiations and economic policies. For instance, India's role in G20 has been pivotal in pushing for reforms that enhance developing countries' voices and participation in global economic governance. India's historical advocacy for decolonization and its leadership in non-aligned movement have also contributed in shaping global governance of norms. The principles of sovereignty, self-determination, and non-interference, which India champions during its struggle for independence and the Cold War period, continue to influence its foreign policy and its stance on global governance. These principles have guided India's effort to promote a more equitable and inclusive international order where the interests of developing countries are adequately represented. In recent years, India has leveraged its growing economic strength and technological prowess to contribute to global governance through economic liberalization in the 1990s, allowing it to integrate more deeply into the global economy and participate actively in international economic institutions. India's engagement with the BRICS nations is another example of its efforts to shape global governance norms. Through BRICS, India has collaborated with other emerging economies to address common challenges and promote a more balanced global economic order. India's contributions to global governance extend beyond economic and political realms. Its rich cultural heritage and soft power assets have enabled it to engage in cultural diplomacy, especially with neighboring countries, promoting intercultural understanding and enhancing its global influence. Initiatives such as the yoga diplomacy, Bollywood outreach have helped India build stronger diplomatic ties and goodwill with other nations. India's influence on global standards during the Amrit Kaal is not just a matter of influence but of transformative force. India's normative contributions emphasize development with dignity, integrating economic growth, social fairness, environmental sustainability, and digital inclusion. This framework sets India apart from traditional development models, highlighting the importance of inclusive and sustainable progress. India's success in demonstrating the viability of the development model, unifying diverse groups, and providing solutions to global challenges will also significantly impact the understanding of how middle powers influence global governance in a multipolar world. Despite geopolitical rivalries and institutional barriers, India's evolving role in global governance presents numerous opportunities. India's commitment to sustainable development, renewable energy, and climate action positions it as a leader in addressing global environmental challenges. By investing in clean energy infrastructure and collaborating with international partners, India has been crucial in mitigating climate change and can do a lot ahead. And advancing sustainable development agenda. India has played a vital role in shaping global policies and frameworks through active participation in international organizations, advocacy for developing countries, and commitment to multilateralism. I'll conclude. So, India's rising global influence during the Amrit Kaal is a testament of its growing economic strength, strategic vision, and commitment to a rules-based international order. By balancing its domestic development and core foreign policy principles with complexities of modern global challenges, India is poised to play a transformative role in shaping the multipolar world order with impact on norm making. India's efforts in economic diplomacy, reformed multilateralism, maritime governance, and climate action underscores its normative contribution on global governance. As India continues to pursue its aspirations to become a developed nation, its leadership will be crucial in addressing global challenges and promoting inclusive development. India's unique approach to development with dignity again offers a new paradigm for middle powers to influence global governance in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you, Dipandita. Excellent time. Both of our speakers have kept excellent time, which gives us quite a lot of time to sort of do discussion and Q&A. What I thought I'd do is I'd open the floor first, just invite questions, not commentaries, from everyone over here. We'll do sets of 3. Please identify yourself, identify the speaker to whom you want to pose your question, and please keep them brief. Please go ahead. So long as you keep them brief.
Hello. The second question is about, if possible, can you please, elaborate or discuss, some things about the similarities and the differences between the concepts of civilization state, which is being propagated and promoted by India, and on the other hand, the same concept which is being promoted and propagated by countries like Russia and China. Thank you.
Since there are 2 questions, I'll take one more from someone else. Yes.
Hello, good morning. I'm Arushi Anthal, and I'm from Amity Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies. So my question is open to both Ms. Abhigya and Ms. Dipandita. The question is, how do you think should India chart its way as a Vishwamitra, especially after Trump's coming to power? So do you think India can manage strategic autonomy when it comes to cooperation with major powers and simultaneously advocating for issues that affect Global South?
Okay, excellent. Very brief questions, like it very much. Abhigya first. Take the first 2 questions and then we'll go to the Pandit.
Civilizational, I'll try, okay. So civilization concepts, when we talk about, it's talking about all the traditional concepts that are there. When we talk about and we study IR and political science altogether, we always take up notions like realism, structuralism. We never talk about Ashshastra, Dhamshastra or Rig Vedas into that consideration. How many of the scholars who are working here also are working on Ashshastra or any other concepts that are there? I don't think so, a lot of them. Now Indian knowledge system has been introduced in curriculum, so we are writing 1 chapter of thesis on particularly basing on those. When we talk about civilizational notions or ideas, we also talk about the local notions that are there. We put them into the Indian foreign policy and we come up with a new thing. Nation state is a concept which was more westernized. When we talk about theories and we look into that perspective. Civilizational was something that was ours. We always had it. It was always there. We were when we talk about putting all the 3 V's also into the perspective, people think and they get surprised that wow, it's a new concept. It was never a new concept. It was always there. It was never in the limelight. Now it is in the limelight because we are pursuing those ideas into all together. So when we talk about these 2 concepts, they are entirely different. And I don't know whether I'm able to answer the question that you were exactly asking, but when we talk about civilization notions, it's all about traditions, heritage, and things that were already there from ages for us. And nation state was something that came up later on, a lot many years back. When we talk about building up civilizations or building up states or building up empires, it was always there for us. But for the other countries, when we look, we study, we go to Athens and Roman empires and all. We never study into the traditional or the things that were already there in our country for all together. So this is something that that is the answer of the question that you have. So if you may add something, if I have not answered.
I'd be happy to do that later. But he had a second question as well.
Okay.
Would you be in a position to compare the other two notions of civilization?
I think so. I've already answered the similarities and dissimilarities between the two. It was there from a lot many years back. It is still new concept. People are rather than...
Sorry, Abhigya, the question was about Russian and Chinese notions of civilizational state. If you're in a position to sort of do that, reflect on it. If not, then it's fine.
I think so. I'll just...
Perfect, no problems. Dipanita.
Not a lot to add on what the other speaker has already said, but again, the idea of the nation state is also more of a modern, it's also a constructed idea rather than the existing idea of a civilizational state which has been there for for a longer period of time. So not to add a lot, I don't think I'll be in a rightful position to answer the question that was specific to Russia and China. So thank you.
No, there was a question from Arushi that was directed to both of you. So I was wondering if you'd want to take that one. Yes.
Okay. So especially with Trump in the White House, the second Trump administration, it provides India with a bigger challenge than what we had seen in the past. But again, because of the bigger the challenges, now we have more areas to explore, especially in global governance and restructuring of norms or representation in international organizations. So whether India will be able to exercise its strategic autonomy to a degree, it will be there'll be several challenges. But again, India will have to chart its own path. So yeah, I think.
Okay, that sounds good. I mean, your privilege. Abhigya, do you want to? Yes, please.
So when we talk about the changes that are there, so why you want to focus on Trump and its administration? If you have a policy and principles that you are being followed, like you are following sets of principles or norms, and you are taking care of your domestic policies in that go as well, then why, if there is something happening abroad, is affecting you in any go? You develop and you adapt to the changes. You don't change the policies and principles altogether. So if the changes are coming, we'll adapt our foreign policies altogether in the same way, and we'll present the solutions for us and the others also if asked upon in the same regular way that we do. So I think so that answers the question that you had asked me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhigya. Yes, please go ahead.
I think so. Now we have started following the principles and norms which are more civilizational based rather than the notions which were Western perspective or Western based. This is also a major time of change for India also, because we are setting a new set of norms for ourselves. We are not following which has already been there. So I think so there are some similarities. It's the same answer. We are adapting to the changes, but in our own way. We are adapting to the changes. We are putting forward new policies, new principles in accordance to what has already been there for us. All the policies, all the books that are there, all the things that we read about in history, we are adapting and looking into it. See, history teaches us a lot of things that can be adapted in the contemporary times. So I think so that is the policy that we are aiming for. Thank you.
Yes, please go ahead. I love a realist in the house, always. Yes.
Okay. Focusing on international norms or emphasizing on international law does not mean that India is not being realist. Again, it has to be. We have certain policies. We have been pushing for more representation in international institutions, especially from the global south. But it has to also be done rather than so. While you say that there has been a lot of changes, a lot of especially in the recent years, but in the recent days rather, but giving up entirely, again harping on the previous speaker, giving up entirely on what we have and just taking a U-turn and devising new strategies, I think is not the way ahead. Rather than keeping with what the practices have been and addressing the concerns that are presently upcoming. So while of course some of the challenges are very pressing, but again you cannot leave out diplomacy and start responding and reacting to the situations. So yeah.
Please go ahead. Okay, I'm going to disqualify that question because that's not got, I mean, it hasn't got anything to do with India's foreign policy. So if that's okay with you. Okay. Any other question? Okay. While you wait and cogitate, let me take the privilege, abuse the privilege of the chair and share a few thoughts with both of you. Empirically very rich, and they also offer synoptic views of the portfolio of India's foreign policy. But because these are academic projects, and I'm guessing that these are stemming from academic projects, right? I would urge you to be slightly mindful of the necessity to keep distance between the discourse and the preoccupations of government and the purpose of scholarship. I think our job fundamentally is to analyze and to be useful to the policy makers. Right? And I have thought a lot about the ways in which IR scholarship, foreign policy scholarship can be useful to policy makers. And I think the two ways in which this can be done. One is actually analyze, deep dive into any one or two aspects of policy that you want to look at and examine it in terms of the bottlenecks that it has. Right? I think that would be a far more useful thing to do, as opposed to what seems like, I mean, it's an interesting exercise, but I would say that this is the stepping stone for that kind of serious scholarship. The second element is, and I agree with you that, we don't have to be enslaved to theoretical perspectives from elsewhere, but do sort of, gesture towards the theoretical framework that you have, the conceptual framework that you have. I know norm came up, global governance came up, multilateralism came up as well. But consider giving an organizing framework to your research as well. And there's a reason why I'm suggesting this. Scholarship needs to travel, right? And scholarship, I mean, it's better that it travels across boundaries. And the way in which we sort of, the possibility that it'll travel smoothly goes up if our frameworks are able to speak to the frameworks of others. Right? So the reason why we sort of work with Western scholarship or somewhere else on realism is because if we use that or we engage with that framework and our work goes out, others are able to engage with it. If we sort of become entirely indigenous, then there'll be no framework, or there'll be no meeting points for other scholars to engage with our work. So that's something to sort of also bear in mind. The third element, this is something, because it sort of came up in both the presentations. I agree with you that the concept of the nation is A, new, and B, Western. But consider the possibility that this is the concept through which the struggle for freedom itself was articulated, right? This is a concept that has animated Indian politics for well over a century, close to 150 years now, coming on 150 years. And it's a concept that has had a lot of very fine intellectual agitation. So even if you don't want to work with the nation-state concept, and I broadly sympathize with you because I do believe that it tends to impoverish our political imagination. But even if you want to do that, I think it's important to sort of negotiate and be appreciative of its very long life on the Indian subcontinent. But here's the second thing. The very concept of the civilization is a twin to the concept of the nation on the subcontinent as well. I mean, the reason why Indian nationalists started thinking of India as a civilization was because the Europeans said that you're lacking in civilization, right? So the very notion of the civilization is also a product of the same encounter through which the concept of the nation actually gets chiseled in the Indian context. So what I'm saying, therefore, is A, the historicity of the two concepts, but also the need to sort of keep a critical eye on the utility of the concepts. I think that would also be very helpful. But good luck with both the projects, and look forward to learning more about them. Thank you. Shall we break? We are keeping good time. Okay.
Thank you so much, sir, for chairing this session so nicely. And thank you to both our participants. We're going to take a short tea break and reconvene here by 12 o'clock. Thank you. Can I request everybody to kindly settle down? We will start with our second technical session. Thank you. We begin our second technical session, which is on India's foreign policy and India as a net security provider. The session will be chaired by Captain of the Indian Navy, Yogendra Prakash Sharma, and he's currently the Deputy Director of the National Maritime Foundation at New Delhi. Sir, over to yours.
Thank you, Stuti ma'am. First of all, welcome everyone again after a good tea break for the second session. As you've seen in the first session, Dr. Atul has already given you a clear perspective of the things to come and what we should expect about geopolitics in our sessions. So after a thought-provoking session on geopolitical shift during Amrit Kaal in the first session, I welcome you all again to this second session, which is on Indian foreign policy and India as a net security provider. So it's an honor to have you all here as we explore the significant role being played by India in ensuring security and stability in the Indian Pacific region. Now, a little one word about net security provider. Like when you see a lot of in speeches, in meetings, you'll find different terminology being used. Somebody says net provider of security. Somebody says provider of net security. I would say we should desist from these terminologies. The only terminology is NSP, that is net security provider. That means, in Indian Ocean and Pacific, there are a lot of nations who can provide net security. So in a sense, there are a lot of net security providers, and India is one of them. Like we can't say that Indian Ocean, India is the only country which can provide net security. So there are a lot of countries who can provide net security, whether it is countries from the IOR and Pacific, or they are from other regions like we have US in the Indian Ocean region and other countries also. So India is also making a place for self to be a net security provider. Now, if we see in the Indian context, the word net security provider was used for the first time in 2009 in Shangri-La Dialogue, wherein I think it was Mr. Robert Gates, who was the then Defense Secretary of United States. He said, and I quote, "We look to India to be a partner and net security provider in the Indian Ocean and beyond." This was back in 2009. Thereafter, our erstwhile Prime Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh again emphasized in May 2013, while he was laying the foundation stone of Indian Defence University at Manesar in Gurgaon. There he said that India is well positioned to become a net security provider in our immediate region and beyond. After that also our present Prime Minister on August 9th, 2021, he again asserted India's role as a net security provider for Indian Ocean region and beyond, while he was chairing a virtual session of the United Nations Security Council. In addition, if we see our Defense Minister, Shri Rajnath Singh, when he was addressing a press conference during the multi-agency humanitarian assistance and disaster relief exercise, I think it was summoned by 2022, he again emphasized that now India has emerged as a regional power and a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific because our capacity to provide humanitarian relief and disaster relief not only to citizens of our nations, but as well as to our regional partners also in recent years. So we are well placed to be a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, once we have accepted this role as a net security provider, now it has become a strategic obligation for us. Now it's not a matter of choice. It's an obligation that we do fulfill our role as and when required. Though the progress has been slow but steady since 2013, and India has emerged as a net security provider in the region and has demonstrated its commitment to maritime security cooperation, whether it is in conducting hydrographic surveys, being a first responder in the humanitarian relief and say disaster assistance, whether it is tackling anti-piracy operations or maritime terrorism. India has been in the forefront in most of these situations. Now, in addition to being a pure security aspect, India has also opened its lines of credit for various countries, not only in the Indo-Pacific region, but like somebody said, as far as Argentina also. In addition to opening lines of credit, India has also supported the island nations in the Indo-Pacific region by gifting the military equipment like maritime reconnaissance aircraft, ships, fast patrol craft, a submarine also. A submarine has also been gifted to one of the countries. First set of BrahMos missile to Philippines, and a host of other military equipment to a number of countries. I would say to include some of them is like Seychelles, Sri Lanka, Mauritius, Maldives, Myanmar, Philippines, Vietnam are some of them. But we are interacting and collaborating with most of the countries in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, in this session, we'll delve into the future security challenges which India may face, and we'll see how it can partner with other nations to overcome them. Today, we have three esteemed speakers. So without wasting further time, I'll invite our first speaker, Mr. K. Navneet, who is the research scholar from School of International Relations and Politics, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam. Mr. Navneet, over to you.
Thank you, sir, for the introduction. So, what I have focused on is India's evolution as a regional security provider, a net security provider which has moved from reticence or from like being away from the power to a net security provider. So I have looked at the evolution of how India got its stance of net security provider. And I have seen that there are two contradicting definitions of net security provider, not contradicting as per, but it says that a net security provider is one that has surplus of resources that is willing to expend it for protecting the security of its neighbors and its region. And I have also seen another definition which says that one country which is willing to expand its area of operations outside its traditional area of operations and do what it's necessary to gather its influence in the region. So both of these definitions are there. And what I see in India is the second one. Not that it has a surplus of resources, but it's willing to expand its horizons and it's looking at other areas of operations. Mainly, we are expanding from Indian Ocean region out into the Indo-Pacific, mainly the South China Sea. So we are seeing a lot of strategic partners and resources there. So India is willing to project its power by its limited resources and use it to increase its area of operations. So I've seen in the evolution of net security provision, there has been historical shifts in thinking. Like, for example, India has always used power when it's necessary to protect its neighbors from political instability and during natural disasters. So India, during its post-independence transition period, has taken a stance of being non-aligned, being away from violence. But after that, the 1962 has pushed India to take a second look at its stance. So we have seen that India, after its independence, has always fought for a position in the Indo-Pacific as a replacement for the British Empire. And India has achieved that up to an extent. But after our failed attempt in non-dependence by depending to Soviet Union, I think we have sustained some injuries in that. So global geopolitical balances are shifting, as we have seen in the recent times. So this stance of India, like not taking a position, being a neutral player, being there for all, it's actually becoming a good thing in the present scenario. Like we need to be resilient and we need to be having strategic patience. We have to wait out the turbulence from the rival big powers, and there needs to be a continued equidistant policy. And while at the same time we should be preparing for any future circumstances, we should be preparing economically, militarily, and by courting our friends and by evaluating our enemies closer. So India has been a maritime power from its ancient times, but it has lost some of its capacity during its post-independence transition era. But India is building up its naval assets, naval resources, and is trying to include some of its regions, expanded area of operations, like mostly in the southwestern Indo-Pacific area, where India has got, I must say, two guardians, like Mauritius and Seychelles. Our PM is visiting Mauritius this week, so India has got its defense sorted out in this region. But when I see in the eastern Indo-Pacific or for the South China Sea, India is still unsure of what to do. It is having its reasons, and mainly it's not to anger China. And also, India has a strategic autonomy, and India is trying to balance its opinions so as not to get into the trap of US compulsions, such as the freedom of navigation exercises. India has not participated, India has not sided with the US in these exercises because we are having one strategic autonomy thing. So apart from that, India's cultural ethos is of spreading peace and not spreading democracy. So India has belief in Vasudhaiva Kudumbakam, Dharma, and Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. So India is looking to be an equal partner and not play a second fiddle or piggyback on the major power security guarantees. There are no permanent allies or enemies in this world. So India is trying to become a dependable ally, not a strong ally. India can be depended on. India is working on its holistic relations with other partners. India is not looking to make enemies. And India is on the way to become one of the global pillars of security, stability, and peace and prosperity. India's relations with the US and Russia, China, these have always been warm, but they are suspicious of one another. And these strategic partnerships, even with the US, France, they are failing short of an alliance type of mechanism. So there needs to be a mutual maintenance of natural balance of power in Asia. So India has to take its stance, but India has to be equidistant. Also, US has been pushing, has been in the side of India's actions, and US has given us a lot of freedom in our continuance of this equidistance policy, such as allowing us to buy weapons from Russia itself. So US has also dehyphenated India and Pakistan, and as per the recent advancements, they are offering equipments of advanced capability to India, which are only meant for close allies. So the future security challenges that I see in this area is the increasing influence of major powers, increasing operations of major powers in the Indian Ocean region, mainly US and China, which is not a great thing for India, but as our esteemed guest has said, chaos is a good thing. So when a push comes to a shove, India can rethink its dependencies and build on its strengths. And India can overcome this struggle. India can become independent. India can become Atmanirbhar when the situation comes. India has also contributed to the regional security through Sagar initiative, as I said, Mauritius and Seychelles. We have provided coastal radars. We have been doing underwater surveys. We have also been increasing our financial assistance packages to these powers. So India can guarantee their security as well as India's own security. India is also involved in matters in the extended neighborhood and increasing the confidence building measures and exercises in these regions. India must focus on the regional connectivity and take back its position in the SAARC so as not to let others take up the position where India left behind. Also, there needs to be a system like for self-preservation. We should be providing the smaller countries their own way of doing things. Like we should be promoting that. We should be promoting the smaller states to do what is best for them, and not to push them into a certain agenda. And India has always contributed as a first responder in the regional systems. And one proverb when I think of this is a closer enemy is better than a faraway friend in times of crisis. So India is always going to be dependable in that role. And there is also a high positive perception by citizens of these countries about India. But India is having one perceived inferiority complex with respect to other powers, which we must be letting go of. We must bide by the power, and we must wait before acting. There needs to be a strategic restraint, and we should be patient to achieve the goals in the long run, and not to take short steps to reach what we think is the goal. We should be setting our goals high. We should be setting the standards high. And we should be spending more time on like development, equal development, and not on rhetoric. And we should be taking up global responsibility to project our image. Not to say we are the global guru, but we should take up the task ourselves, like how to integrate climate resilience, how to build ecosystems which are good for people and good for the environment. And we should be helping the smaller, weaker economies on how to choose the India's path. which is the Bharat way of doing things. We should be the equal and sustainable growth of all. And in terms of why we should be a net security provider, India is always growing, so India has its own reasons. India has trade passing through the Indian Ocean region. India should protect that. And also, India should develop more, India should focus more on the human security front of things. Even our Prime Minister is saying human security is much greater than the territorial integrity. So that's all my perceptions. I think my viewpoint is very limited, but I think I am able to provide some insights into this. Thank you.
Thank you, Navneet, for giving an elaborate your views on the India's journey from reticence to becoming a net security provider. I'm sure, as you have discussed, India is doing its bit, though in a gradual manner, but it's doing its bit in ensuring that it cements its place in the Indo-Pacific as a net security provider. Now, as we have seen in the beginning, that net security is not only military security. It is what Prime Minister said in the UN Security Council in Hindi say, Shuddh Suraksha Pradata. Like it's a complete security, whether it is security of international shipping lanes, security of the sea lines of communication, whether you are having security that in case of bad weather or in any kind of disaster, you will get the assistance. So whosoever provide the assistance, he'll be the net security provider. Now, like you have seen yesterday, there is a accident somewhere near England that a vessel on anchorage, like one of the ships was not moving also. One of them was on the anchorage, a oil tanker, steady. So another ship, which was a carrier, it rammed into the oil tanker, and the oil tanker was on fire, and everybody has abandoned the ship. And the British Coast Guard and the other people who are present around, they are doing their best efforts to save at least the human life. So if you see that way, since 2023, India has done more than 23 missions where our forces have rescued peoples who were either hijacked by the pirates or they were attacked by the pirates. We have given assistance where some of the merchantmen motor vessels in Gulf of Aden, they have been attacked by Houthi missiles, and we have given immediate relief as early as possible. Why? Because for about last 10 years or so, at any given time, some of our forces are always present in that region. So thank you, Navneet, for giving elaborate details on the India's journey as a net security provider. Now I'll invite our second speaker, Mr. Uday Nitin Patil. He's a research scholar in Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, Manipal Academy of Higher Education, Manipal. He'll be giving his views on India as a net security provider, strategic convergence, and the future of India-US security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. Over to you, Uday.
Thank you so much, sir. Honorable Chair, distinguished and eminent personalities in the room, ladies and gentlemen. So, like Honorable Chair has mentioned, that I'll be discussing India as a net security provider and the strategic convergence and the future of India-US security cooperation in the Indo-Pacific. So the previous speaker, Mr. Navneet, and the chair has already covered the various attributes that are there around the concept of India being a net security provider. So I would try to look at it at the wider gamut from the perspective of India-US relations and how those can either enhance the role or what would be the limitations, if at all there are any. So moving ahead, is there a PPT? Okay, so moving ahead, recently Indian Ocean Conference took place in Muscat, Oman, where Dr. S. Jaishankar had represented India, and there he specifically reinforced India's commitment in terms of its regional security partnerships as well as the responsibility. And if you go through the recent US communications, they have been also backing India's role or overall, impact that India can have as a net security provider in the larger gamut. If we consider the maritime security leadership and we discuss India, we have a proven track record. Like for example, 2004 tsunami, wherein India was also hit significantly. Still, India had joined the core group of United States, Japan, and Australia in terms of the HADR operations. Then Cyclone Nargis was another such event wherein India stepped in and did the needful. And of course, the Maldives Waterhead and the MH370 flight search, wherein India had participated in the various operations that were being conducted at the same time. In terms of the strategic footprint in the present context, Sagar initiative is one of the initiatives that have been launched by the Indian government with having a good leadership effort in IONS and IORA, as well as recently there has been quite a lot of attention with regard to the maritime domain awareness and the capacity building for Indian Ocean region nations. So whatever little or more can be done in terms of be it discussions, be it deliberations, or be it small initiatives that can contribute the larger goal as is being done. In terms of the regional impact, especially talking from the security perspective, a lot of cooperation as well as exercises are being held to ensure that counter-piracy operations are in check, maritime security is being ensured, and a rule-based international order, which has been a very pivotal factor for India, is being ensured. And of course, the current theater of geopolitical competition that we call, which is the Indo-Pacific. So balancing the external influences and actors that are rising or that are playing a crucial part, both positively as well as negatively, are being considered. So in short, India's proactive role fortifies regional stability, and the US collaboration that is there with India enhances the Indo-Pacific security architecture in the larger gamut to an extent. So when we discuss the, I'm sorry for if the text is too small, but India-US strategic convergence in maritime security if we consider. So briefly, I would like to talk it from 5 various perspectives. First of all, Indo-Pacific as the core of India-US ties. So in since 2024, especially from when India and US relationship on various bilateral issues has been elevated on a lot of cooperative sectors, both nations have deepened their engagement and have tried to align the strategic interest under the successive US administration as well, because there is a sense of continuity from Obama administration, then later Trump, and later Biden, and now Trump 2.0 is already in place. So what were the key dimensions of convergence that one needs to look at? First of all, it was the integration of Indo-Pacific strategy into the bilateral ties, which was earlier known as the Asia-Pacific, and that was being considered as the strategic rebalance by the US under Obama, which later became the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy under Trump. So Quad was one of the important mechanisms in this revitalization of the strategy, which gave a sense of revitalization to the Quad-led multilateralism and shared concerns over China that the member states have, as well as cooperation in terms of regional economic initiatives such as IPF, where although there are differences, but at least the discussions are there. Countering China's maritime expansion can be seen as another dimension, because the US sees India as a strategic counterweight in the Indian Ocean region, driving a deeper collaboration. And that has been one of the very important factors that picture into the India-US bilateral relationship. Apart from that, strengthening defense ties has been one of the core interests or area where both New Delhi and Washington has put a lot of hard work. So foundational agreements like GSO, MIA, LIMOA, COMCASA, BECA, all of these, the very idea is to institutionalize the cooperation in a way that it enhances the military interoperability, as well as it heightens the defense cooperation that is already there on newer heights in terms of the military aspect. Maritime security as a pillar. So if we consider the press statements, joint statements in the past 1 decade from where these discussions have taken considerable significance amongst the bilateral talks, maritime domain or maritime security has always featured, and some or the other development had always taken place. So that also gives a sense of indication that maritime security or maritime domain is one of the crucial factors that bring Washington and New Delhi on table. So since we have already discussed the frameworks, it also becomes important to discuss the effectiveness of the existing frameworks. So first of all, if we take it on a positive note, resilient and expanding security ties. So despite global pressures, or where US has been already reassessing its global commitments, be it security, be it economic, somehow India-US defense cooperation has sustained a good pace and has strengthened with time, driven by shared concerns over China's assertiveness. Like I mentioned in the previous slide, the maritime security is a core objective because both the nations prioritize energy security, freedom of navigation, and the priority or the attention that they are giving to the non-traditional threats, operationalized through joint naval exercises. So that has also been a very important factor, and the Quad as a strategic force multiplier, because institutionalized Indo-Pacific engagement through Quad with existing ASEAN frameworks, deepening regional coordination is another aspect, because ASEAN Ministers Plus is also given the equal importance, and because whatever is left in terms of various other issues is tried to be dealt with the Quad as the instrument. Persistent strategic divergences have been there. So looking at the other side, because despite strong defense agreements and shared concerns over China, differences in regional priorities, for example, the US aid to Pakistan in terms of the military aid, as well as India's stance on Ukraine, have been certain factors which have act as a bit of stressing points for the relationship or the bilateral ties. And there is no doubt that there are some structural constraints to full convergence, because India has been always advocating and is very convinced with regard to the strategic autonomy it wants to have. Whereas on the other side, Washington still tries to look India from the typical ally or partner perspective, wherein it expects India to do certain things. And the partnership, as we can see, is rather shaped by a pragmatism than by full alliance. So there is still some concern in the Washington policy elites that whether India can still be relied upon when a situation comes. Then further ahead, recently President Biden stepped down as the president. So what developments happened, I would like to take a look briefly. So of course, but the Biden administration only elevated India's strategic role in terms of the overall policy considerations that the United States was taking forward. Then the institutionalization of Quad and expansion, because the first leader-level summit happened under him, and the very areas that were being dealt by Quad increased from health security to climate change to infrastructure, artificial intelligence, and emerging technologies as well. Key defense agreements, including MQ-9B drone deal and security of supply arrangement, SOSA, reinforce the security and defense trade. In terms of technology and geoeconomics, Biden administration was very vocal, especially in terms of artificial intelligence, critical technologies, DTTI initiatives that further integrated India into the US strategic frameworks. Although there have been some structural challenges in convergence, because despite deeper engagement, differences in foreign policy priorities remain key to determine the long-term alignment, and that are being worked upon as we speak. Potential areas of cooperation that we can see in the, now we look at the Trump 2.0 and the road ahead. So during Trump's first term, we know that President Trump had shared a good rapport with Prime Minister Modi, and the personalized diplomacy to an extent had worked for the betterment of the India-US relationship in terms of various agreements that were taken into consideration. Then the focus that President Trump had on Quad as well as the Indo-Pacific was very much a binding factor. China as a strategic competitor was another factor that played a crucial part. And a second term would likely sustain the upward trajectory of bilateral ties, with India expecting continuity in strategic cooperation. I mean, of course, by no means it is to say that differences wouldn't be there, but overall the larger objective or goal would move forward. So finally, talking about the potential areas of cooperation. So bilateral trade initiative, which has been announced, announced negotiations signal efforts to resolve trade frictions and establish a structured economic engagement, because recent development suggests that trade has been one of the factors that might compromise the overall relationship. Defense sales and technology transfers, so discussions on F-35 fighter jets, relax US export controls, and autonomous defense system highlight deepening security cooperation. Reciprocal defense procurement, potential agreement to integrate India into the US defense industrial base, reinforcing the strategic interoperability is one of the crucial factors. Military interoperability and Indo-Pacific deployment, so commitment to enhancing joint operational activities to a further scale and logistics sharing to bolster regional security should be another factor to be looked into. And of course, the strategic Indo-Pacific role, wherein strengthened cooperation positions India as a key pillar in the US Indo-Pacific strategy, addressing shared security challenges. So to conclude, India has positioned itself as a key pillar of regional stability, and constantly India has been expanding its role as a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific. The deepening strategic collaboration with the US has enhanced US-India defense cooperation, including interoperability initiatives and technology sharing, which reinforces India's security commitments in the larger context. Indo-Pacific stability and regional order are two important priorities for India as well. So India's proactive maritime engagement, logistics sharing agreements, and joint exercises contribute to deterring coercive actions and maintaining a rules-based order in the region. Institutionalizing defense cooperation, wherein reciprocal defense procurement, defense industrial collaboration, and high-end technology transfer bolster India's operational capabilities, and it is expected to rise with time. Sustaining long-term alignment, so while strategic convergences drive closer cooperation, balancing national security priorities will shape the trajectory of India's net security provider role. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Uday, for giving elaborate details and your perspective on Indo-US security cooperation. I think you have covered most of the areas where the Indo-US relations are going through. I would say, I'll just add one point, that though we do need US, but I would say US needs India more than us. Why? Because considering the geostrategic location of India, US cannot afford to disintegrate from India, whether it is on the issue of we not supporting their views on Ukraine-Russia war, and for that matter, on any other matter. And I would say the Indian diplomacy and the Indian government has taken a reasonable balance in putting across their views, not to antagonize, or I would say not to go anti, whether it is anti-US or anti-Europe. We have taken a balanced view that we will look after everybody, but the nation comes first. The needs, requirement, whether it is security, energy, the requirement of the nations comes first, and of course, after that, we'll cooperate and we'll be with all others. So thank you, Uday. Now, before we have some time before we open the floor for discussions, now I'll invite our third speaker, Ms. Vidhi Rathore. She's a research scholar at School of International Studies, Central University of Gujarat, Vadodara. She'll be presenting her views on India as a net security provider to island nations in the Indo-Pacific. Over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. As the chair, Navneet, Uday has already talked a lot about India as a net security provider, and we have almost covered everything. But, okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to talk on India as a net security provider to island nations in the Indo-Pacific. As in the recent years, we have seen that Indian foreign policy has undergone a transformative shift driven by the changing dynamics of global politics, regional security concerns, and India's aspiration to play a larger role on the world stage. A key aspect of this transformation is India's evolving role as a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific region. As we are aware that the Indo-Pacific region has become a geopolitical center of 21st century because it has a vital sea lanes and strategic rivalries. India, positioned between the Indian and the Pacific Oceans, plays a vital player in ensuring security across this region. As India's growing relation with island nations such as Maldives, Seychelles, Mauritius, and Pacific Islands are also integral to strengthening its role as a net security provider. India's evolving foreign policy has evolved from its non-alignment stance during the Cold War to a more proactive security role in 21st century. Initially, India's policy was focused on maintaining sovereignty and independence guided by the principle of non-alignment. However, after the Cold War and the economic liberalization of 1990s, the Indian foreign policy has shifted in towards greater global engagement. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, India has emphasized the Act East policy and the Sagar initiative, further advancing India's maritime security strategy. This transition highlights India's recognition to its strategic importance in the Indo-Pacific. The concept of a net security provider underscores India's role in fostering regional security, both through diplomatic efforts and military engagement with the island nations. India is a net security provider for island nations. Island nations in the Indo-Pacific such as Mauritius, Seychelles, Sri Lanka, and the Pacific island nations are strategically important for maritime security. Islands will shape the new framework for the security architecture. Access to and influence over the islands will provide strategic advantages, thereby influencing the response from the other competitors. These islands are vital to and can facilitate a navy's continuous presence along the key international shipping routes, allowing a navy to patrol and secure SLOSCS. These countries have larger exclusive economic zones and vital shipping routes passing through their waters, making them central to regional security. India's engagement with these nations focus on strengthening their maritime security, combating piracy, and addressing shared challenges like climate change and natural disasters. India's support to these island nations include joint naval exercise, defense cooperation agreements, and humanitarian assistance. We'll start with maritime security and defense cooperation. India has actively enhanced the maritime capabilities of island nations through joint naval exercises and training programs. For example, SILEX, initiated in 2005 between India and Sri Lanka, has expanded in scope, strengthening bilateral maritime cooperation. Similarly, the India's Navy presence in Seychelles conducting joint EEZ surveillance exemplifies India's commitment to regional stability under the Sagar initiative. Additionally, India has provided defense assistance to island nations, including military equipments and training program. For assistance, India had trained around 1,400 personnel of Maldives National Defense Force, helping to enhance the Maldives' ability to secure its EEZs and maintain regional security. Further, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. The Indo-Pacific region is vulnerable to natural disaster due to climatic change. India has been a key provider of humanitarian aid, offering disaster relief during crisis. For example, following the 2024 earthquake in Vanuatu, India pledged USD 500,000 for relief efforts. Similarly, India's proactive response during the cyclone in Madagascar and Mozambique underscores its role as a first responder in the region. India's involvement in disaster risk reduction, such as its Disaster Reduction and Management Initiative, is an essential component of its Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative, contributing to reliance of island nations facing climate-induced challenges. With its naval capabilities, India highlights itself as a first responder and net security provider in the region. This will in turn strengthen India's diplomatic ties with these islands, and India could solidify its regional leadership in Indian Ocean and beyond. Capacity building. Capacity building and infrastructure development. India has also focused on building infrastructure in island nations to enhance their maritime security and economic stability. For instance, India's support for the development of Ajilila Island in Mauritius, including the construction of an airstrip and jetty, strengthened maritime capabilities and regional securities. Moreover, India's initiatives such as the establishment of Jan Aushadhi centers and specialty hospitals demonstrate a human-centric approach to capacity building, supporting the health and welfare of island communities. Therefore, fostering such developments through infrastructure projects, India strengthens its diplomatic ties with these islands and in turn contributes to regional stability and security. Now we come to challenges and opportunities. Despite its growing influence as a net security provider, India faces challenges in the Indo-Pacific. Of course, the rise of China, particularly through its Belt and Road Initiative, its Maritime Silk Road, and the military presence and its longing of maritime expansion poses a strategic challenges. India's challenge lies in balancing its relation with neighboring countries while countering China's growing influence in the region. However, these challenges also present opportunities for India to strengthen regional security partnership, particularly through multilateral frameworks like Quad and Indian Ocean Rim Association. India's growing naval capabilities and cooperation with the countries like United States, Japan, and Australia offers avenues to enhance regional maritime security. Now, I would like to conclude that India's transforming into a net security provider in the Indo-Pacific reflects its strategic vision to ensure regional stability and security by enhancing defense cooperation, providing humanitarian assistance, and supporting infrastructure development. India has reinforced its role as a responsible leader in the region. Despite challenges, India's proactive engagement with the island nation positions it as a key player in shaping the future security architecture of the Indo-Pacific. Through continued collaboration, India can strengthen its leadership role and contribute to free, open, and secure Indo-Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidhi, for giving elaborate details on the cooperation between India and the island nations in the Indo-Pacific region. I agree with you that India has to be wary of China's growing maritime power. But I would add just a small thing in it. Though China's maritime power is growing well beyond anybody's imagination, especially in the South China Sea, whether it is South China Sea, East China Sea, and the researchers and scholars, they say that China is encircling India in the Indian Ocean region, whether by the way of cooperation with Sri Lanka, getting the submarine base in Sri Lanka, Mauritius, and other places. I would look at it in a different perspective. I would say India is not being encircled by China, but China has interest in Indian Ocean region because this is the place where more than 70% of the oil trade happens. And of course, that is the route for China if it has to go to Europe or the Mediterranean Sea. So China is doing whatever it is doing in Indian Ocean region because of his requirement. Like I don't think so that the aim of China is to encircle India. I would say in a bargain, we are getting encircled. So that may be true. That being said, I'll thank all the three speakers for giving all the detailed perspective on all the aspects of India as a net security provider, whether it is in relation to the Indo-US relations, whether it is support to the island nations in the Indo-Pacific. So now I'll open the house for discussion. I'll request all of you to first identify whosoever is asking the questions. Please identify yourself and you may direct the question to the specific speaker. Yeah, please. Yes, ma'am. First row.
Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, from South Asian University. My first question is addressed to Mr. Amrit. As you focused on India-US cooperation in Indo-Pacific, but with US reducing its security commitments to its allies, and India's maritime security strategy showing significant reliance on partnership with US and Japan and Quad, how can India recalibrate its approach, reducing its dependence on foreign military imports to ensure strategic autonomy in evolving Indo-Pacific strategy? And I have a second question, which is open to all, the chair and the speaker. The Indo-Pacific itself is often seen as a Western imposed construct shaped by US-led narrative. Should India develop its own vision of Indo-Pacific grounded in its civilizational identity, cultural heritage, and regional priorities to assert greater agency in shaping the regional order? That's it.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Yeah. Uday, would you like to answer? Yeah, I think it was addressed to Uday.
Yeah.
Both of you can, but
Okay.
first.
I'm sorry, I lost the track of the first question. It was, sir.
I think someone made a question was like seeing India's dependence on US, how and seeing its dependence on foreign military imports, how can India redirect its strategic autonomy and redirect its policy towards Indo-Pacific landscape?
Okay, so I think I got your question. With the limited understanding that I have is, as of now, I don't think it would be really timely or very efficient in terms of the defense industrial complex in case if we want to be autonomous in that regard. Because the amount of resources, the amount of research and the amount of overall, monetary provisions that are required for it are too, gigantic. So the best way out in such scenarios is to, have a proper deal with the already existing marketplace and try to maximize our interests. So as of now, we are importing both from Russia as well as the US. So the overall idea is to strengthen the military capability. Whether, I mean, this is my personal opinion, but how do you build it is, a secondary thing. To have a strength that can be showcased is very much important, and considering the various economical as well as technological constraints that we have, it would not be suffice to say that we should be autonomous in the defense production or the development, because in the past we have seen that we have had significant failures while doing the same. So I think unless and until we just do not import anything or any defense equipment or strategic technologies relying simply on a single country, I think it should do the job for us. When it comes to the second question of yours, which was regard to the construct of the Indo-Pacific, so there are various debates, discussions, as well as point of views with regard to the construct in general. So, if you see the Indo-Pacific strategy articulated by the US, they define the area separately. France will define it on its own. So if you are asking in that sense, I think India already has a clear-cut idea that what it perceives the Indo-Pacific as to be. So here, rather than going into the traditional values or having the vision or, that how do we articulate it, I think articulation is not essential or important here. Articulation has already been done and has been done in a way that lot of other thoughts are also being entertained, lot of other considerations are also being put on the table, not just that, okay, US has said, so this is Indo-Pacific and that's what we are doing. So now comes the next step, that since we have identified this huge region, which is going to be the most crucial theater of geopolitical competition as well as opportunities, not just about the competition, considering the natural resources, considering the huge amount of population that lives inside the region, I think it's more important to focus on the holistic overall development as well as the securing the free lines of navigations as well as ensuring the resilient supply chain architecture, which shall be beneficial for all, rather than going into the conceptual differences or various perceptions or ideas that we might have. Thank you.
Want to add something?
Okay, for the first question, it was regarding how India can reduce the dependencies with respect to US and Japan. So, as far as my understanding goes, India has attained self-sufficiency in its maritime capabilities, like in case of Navy building its ships. So, India has reduced its dependency on many fronts in that aspect. And another thing is, as long as the trade flows through Indian Ocean region towards China, there will be what our sir has said, China has to secure its interest. So India is having a secondary effect of what China does. So if the flow of trade somehow manages to move out of this Indian Ocean region, like in case of oil or in case of these, in the future these things can happen. So as far as my understanding goes, Indian Ocean region can reduce, like go out of importance if the trade imbalance between, like in case of US and China trade tensions, if US is nearshoring its infrastructure or its manufacturing, then India does have a reduced impact from the Indian Ocean region and China's excessive assertions. So India has to take a long-term view rather than keeping China at the enemy's end and keeping the US as a friend. It's not possible to calculate what will happen in the future. So we have to keep them at an arm's distance, everyone, even US and China. So that's my view. That's all. So one more thing, India's greater role, like civilizational status. So what I have said is India, like people believing in India's view of human security, like securing human security rather than securing a tract of land. So it might be more aspirational for smaller states to follow. So that's my understanding.
So I'll go with what Navneet said, but I would say though we have come a long way, but I won't say that we have become completely self-sufficient in the maritime capacity building, but definitely we have come a long way in last 1 decade with the present government enforcing that policy of Atmanirbhar Bharat. Because when I was there in the procurement section, so I have seen like if you're going for a high-tech technology item, they'll say, okay, you can go for it, but first spend some time. Is it available anywhere in India? Anywhere close? Now, if it is available even a notch below, go for it. Why? Because if you purchase it, you will infuse the money for R&D so that the things will come up better. I would say if rising Sensex is any indication, if you see the Indian shipbuilding stocks, whether it is Mazgaon docks, whether it is Cochin shipyard, Hindustan shipyard, L&T shipyards, and they're all going great guns. So they're doing well. Just to name a few, L&T has made about 12 fast attack craft and they gave it to Vietnam. A Cora class military corvette has been prepared specially, I would say manufactured specially for, I think it has been given to Mauritius. So it has been made for them. Garden Reach shipyard in Kolkata is making. Similarly, there are a lot of other things, even high-tech items like BrahMos missile, which is one of the most sophisticated and advanced supersonic missiles. India has already delivered its first installment to, anybody remember which country they have given? Indonesia. Philippines. So first lot has already gone. So it is, I would say, unless we do this, the money will not be pumped into our defense industry. The more funds we have in maritime development or maritime industry sector, I would say very soon we'll reduce the foreign dependence as far as even in the Mazgaon docks and where shipbuilding, whether it is shipbuilding for the Navy or the, I would say the merchant Navy where we have motor vessels being prepared, the dependence on foreign dependence is reducing, I would say in great extent. Even the warships, the percentage has come down below 30% now, which is reduced to only avionics or maybe high-end electronics. So I would say we are doing well in that. And as far as somebody said, Indo-Pacific is a Western construct. I would say, like in my last class only, my Director General said, in that class there were 3 Vaishnavis sitting. He said, Vaishnavi for a particular family, the names are all same. But they see it in different perspective. Like I would say, India has already come a long way in developing our own Indo-Pacific construct. Like if you go through, if you search around, there is a concept called IPOI, Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. Now it's not a Western concept. It is Indian concept, Indo-Pacific defined in Indian terms. Like Sagar is also a part of it. Now Sagar is, it's not an alliance. We have not collaborated with anybody. We say it's security and growth for all in the region. If somebody wants to come, everybody is welcome. If anybody doesn't want to come, he's also welcome. Now, as far as IPOI is concerned, they have 7 pillars. And India is not heading all those verticals. India may be heading few verticals, but there are other nations who are heading those verticals. So India is definitely developing its own Indo-Pacific narrative. It is, I would say, it is not dependent upon what, I would say Indo-Pacific means different to US, it means different to China, it means different to other countries, and it means whatever it means to us. So I would say, because presently I am in the National Maritime Foundation, I am clear. Like recently we had a US delegation, again one more is coming next week. We also tell them our Indo-Pacific is different, but it necessarily need not coincide with your Indo-Pacific. So I can assure you our Indo-Pacific, we have developed our construct that we can assure. Okay, now we'll take 3 set of questions, then we can answer them, otherwise we'll not be able to. Yeah, one from this side, ma'am.
Hi.
Yeah, please.
Thank you for your question. So, yeah.
We'll take 2 more so that we'll answer them together. So, one from that side.
So I just had a question to the second speaker who spoke on India-US security cooperation. So you, I think, had mentioned in your presentation that you stated that India expects continuity from the Trump 2.0 administration. So, but considering the current political climate and like with the only thing being predictable about the current US administration being its unpredictability, would you still consider the US to be a reliable partner in terms of security cooperation? So just your assessment on that.
Okay, one more, somebody's, yeah.
I am Dhulipudi and I am a research scholar in Banaras Hindu University. So my question is to the first speaker. You mentioned that India is lacking an alliance level of closeness with US and France, but you also mentioned that India needs to be equidistant. So are these 2 things possible together or aren't they contradictory? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. You can take all 3 questions and answer them whatever is pertaining to you.
Thank you, sir. I'll take the first 2. So one question was regard to the areas of cooperation and whether we would be likely in the shadow of the US for a longer term in return. Well, I see it a bit differently, I would say, because when we talk about areas of potential cooperation, I think the benefiting side is more towards New Delhi, because we are, considering several other aspects of development as well as technology as well as cooperation in terms of, like we were discussing, maritime domain and all. Secondly, I think now the Western world, be it the United States or be it the EU, knows very well that we are tough negotiators by now. So because the current establishment that is taking care of things, they are very much vocal and very much clear on the priorities that they have developed. So a lot of foreign policy experts, for example, like Ashley Tillis, in a famous foreign affairs or foreign policy article, I'm not sure, he mentioned that you are not dealing with the same India that you used to deal a decade back. And although you might term all the strategic partner allies or whatever, unless and until India's strategic autonomy is checked according to them, or is met according to them, or they are calculating their risks, and then only they will contribute according to the way they want to. So I think that's a very conscious cooperation that has been going on, especially from the Indian side, or the way the concerns have been represented. So I don't really think that we would be under the shadow because the equations have changed. Like Honorable Chair had already mentioned, US needs India equally in a lot of other issues, and it's the potential counterweight in the Indian Ocean region. So yeah, coming to the second question, that Trump 2.0, the way the things have been happening in the recent times, even when Trump took over during his first term, a lot of unpredictability was there in the initial times. And the campaigns, both the campaigns, if you see, there have been a lot of emphasis on the domestic factors as well as domestic, I would say insecurities that he addresses, and that's why he's so popular in many, parts of the country. But at the larger outset, I would like to say that even then, when he was already reassessing the existing security arrangements that the US had with the partners since like World War II or like that, India, although being a nascent partner as it used to be called during those days, Trump was very much willing to keep, faith as well as, negotiate the things that convince India. Like it's one of the statements he himself had mentioned that Prime Minister Modi is a tough negotiator. So the broader point that I'm trying to make here is that I think the whole world was prepared for Trump 2.0, that it is going to be unpredictable. And the initial days, some of the US foreign policy experts have even compared with him Andrew Jackson, considering the number of executive statements that he has signed in such a short time. But the larger goals of US foreign policy, even during his first term, were more or less, intact. And since Indo-Pacific is going to be a very important, crucial factor as a strategic consideration for Trump as well, and I think the administration knows, the current Secretary of State is considered as a bit of a pro-India, because usually it's the Department of State that has its reservations with regard to India. So I don't think, of course, there would be some hiccups, because if you go by the, I think someone had mentioned that everyone who has shook hands with Biden will get punished. So that by keeping that logic, I mean, things are not going to be that worse. Of course, there would be some hiccups, but the larger goals, especially in terms of Indo-Pacific, I think would be more intact. And I think, it should not worry New Delhi too much, because, even the administration knows very well that what India wants and what India will, agree for. Thank you.
Yes, the contradictions in alliance and equidistance. So what I said is not as a proponent of alliance, but what I said is India is taking the right path by not going with an alliance, because there needs to be certain acts which needs to be done in an alliance that should be in confluence with the other allies, what they think is true. So if India needs to have a say on certain things, it's better not to be in an alliance but in a partnership where there is a common mutually agreed upon variable or question they need to answer, like what they need to do in certain conditions. So a partnership is better, in my opinion, than an alliance where India does not have a say on its things.
How please answer your question? So basically what I'll go with him, he's saying that, and somebody also said, does India see US now as a ally or a I would say India sees US and other countries as a partnership, as a partner, not as an ally. And for that matter, the US also may not see us as a alliance, as an ally of NATO or any other country. They can see us as a partner. And I would say the advantage of being equidistant is that the world is the geopolitics is ever changing. So you never know which side you might have to stand. So that's why equidistance, I would say, maybe a better policy. Maybe we missed something in Bangladesh when something happened, that whenever we are interacting with another nation, we have to interact with both the sides, whether the ruling side or the side which is in opposition. Why? Because today the one particular party or one particular segment may be in opposition. Tomorrow they may be in power, but we have to be in touch with that particular nation. So we can't take sides just because in Trump 2.0, there are certain policies. I would say he is doing what he thinks is good for US. And he's right. He has the right to do it. They are not doing anything anti-India or for that matter anti a particular country. They are doing something which is pro-US. That's what they think, and they have all. They are entitled to do whatever they are doing. Why? Because they are doing for their nation. And somebody said, I think her question was not answered with whatever support we are giving to the island nations, whether it is just economic or humanitarian only. So I had mentioned few economic aids where military equipment has been given, a lot of other lines of credits have been opened. But in addition, most of the missions in Arabian Sea and for that matter in Indian Ocean, mostly they have been humanitarian. Like if you see just, I thought I'll mention few of them. In 2000, March 24, a hijacked fishing vessel was rescued by Indian Navy, and 23 fishermen were rescued. Incidentally, all 23 were Pakistanis. So it's not that we are taking a biased view. India is ready to act as a net security provider for all in the region, and going along with that policy of security and growth for all in the region. Just to name a few more, in Jan 2024, again a Sri Lanka fishing vessel was rescued, and in February 2022, there was a Palau flagged vessel MV Islander which caught fire after a Houthi missile intercepted them. So we rescued all the people who were there on board. I would say the list is long. We have helped a sailing vessel which was again attacked by Houthis for no rhyme and reason in the Gulf of Aden. And if you see back in 2004, though India in the tsunami itself was a victim, but we went all the way to the Maldives, Sri Lanka, Indonesia. We did help each and everybody in whatever capacity we could. And of course, Mauritius, Maldives, and all of the island nations, not only in economical support, we are definitely providing all the possible humanitarian assistance, and in the times of disaster, we are providing relief. Now, I think I have just time to. One more.
I would like to add to that humanitarian relief helps, in enhancing the soft power among the masses of the nations. That will help in, bringing pro-Indian narratives among the masses. Thus, pro-Indian leaders will be there, and that will help us in enhancing our trade as well. So in that sense, we can work.
Yeah. So just a few points from my side for all the three researchers. For Navneet, actually, you said we are not doing much in the South China Sea. We are focusing only on IOR. I would say we are doing something on that area also. If you see Quad, India is a part of Quad, where I would say it is very well to the discomfort of China that India is a Quad member along with US, Japan, and Australia. And as I said, we have already delivered the BrahMos missiles to Philippines, and we are doing a lot of other military cooperation with the Vietnam. So I would say India is, I would say, doing whatever it has to do in the Pacific region of that area. Why? Because we have to look our interest. We'll support or we'll interfere or we'll intervene only to a level which is in our interest. We'll not be doing against any particular thing, against any country, but we'll be doing for our nation. So you can include little bit on that also in your thing. And Uday, you have said that I agree that you have said we already have a lot of initiatives for Indo-US cooperations. You can include IPOI in that. And when you talk about maritime domain awareness, in India we have opened IFC IOA, that is Information Fusion Center for Indian Ocean region, which is there in Gurgaon now. There are about representatives of about 14 countries sitting over there to build up a maritime, I would say, maritime domain awareness picture, and it is made available to all possible players and whosoever is traversing through Indian Ocean region. That maritime domain awareness picture is available to all of them. And just because we are having representatives from most of the countries, it is a dynamic thing which is being updated on a, I would say, on-time basis. It is being updated on a daily basis. Not on a daily basis, it is online that most of the data it comes, and it is of great importance to all the countries. And in the Indian, when I said about IPOI, that Indian Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, as a part of that, the Indian government, in cooperation with the Indian Navy and National Maritime Foundation, we are having an annual dialogue, that is Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue, where the representatives from I would say most of the Indo-Pacific countries, in addition, the other countries, other representatives from other countries also come, and we do develop a cohesive cooperative environment so that we can go ahead and fulfill our wishes, our aims and objectives of the Indo-Pacific region. And for Vidhi, I'll request, in addition to, you said we already have a lot of cooperation with the countries, island nations. There are a lot of bilateral exercises, bilateral agreements. In addition, you just search on net, we are having at least 3 trilateral agreements. Trilateral agreement where not only economic cooperation is there, but military cooperation, joint exercises, military training, that also happens. And in addition, we have initiative Milan, where all the navies of all the coastal states, I think about 6 to 7 countries, they do meet for last about 10-15 years. The Milan exercise goes on. Mostly it happens in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and at times it is hosted by the other countries also. So I would thank all 3 speakers for giving an elaborate perspective about India as a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region, and I would thank the audience also for active participation and insightful contributions. So whatever we have done, let us continue to build on the momentum generated today and strive towards a more secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. Thank you all. Thank you everyone. Jai Hind.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing this session, and thank you to our participating scholars. If you will give us just 1 minute, we will make a slight seating arrangement change, and we will go into our last technical session. Thank you.
Let me say this, that this is an excellent initiative by ICWA, because giving young scholars an opportunity to speak in forums like this will not only give them confidence, but also leads to a very important thing as far as Indian foreign policy is concerned, because we'll get a very new ideas. And I'm sure with the kind of platform that they get here, they will also try to build and will also encourage a number of other young scholars to come up with new themes, new ideas on Indian foreign policy and to discuss it. The last session is on the development policy, and in the morning we had an excellent session on geopolitics, a very conceptual understanding on Indian foreign policy. Move from there, we have discussed about a very hard power issue like net security provider. And from there now on some soft power approach of Indian foreign policy, and that is the development issue. Interestingly, we have discussed a lot of aid politics in last few weeks with US aid being banned by Trump. But this is something very unfortunate that we don't discuss much about the Indian development approach. To give it a perspective, let me give you a figure that since 2000, India has almost given 48 billion USD to a number of countries in foreign aid. And there are three basic ways of India's, or three different approaches of Indian foreign policy as far as development policy is concerned. That is grant, line of credit, and capacity building. In all three, India's capacity building and training programs are very much appreciated by a number of countries, and it was started in 1964. And almost like 150 countries are being beneficiaries of these training programs. So as I said, that we discuss a lot about the US aid, about aid from other countries, European Union, but there's a very lack of engagement on India's development policy. Since 2015, in fact, India is regarded as a net donor, giving almost $890 million per year. India is also known for its, some of the papers were actually on those issues as well, giving a lot of relief during the disaster. During COVID, India is being regarded as a pharmacy of the world because the kind of a support India has given to a number of countries. In 2025, we have given almost 2 tons of life-saving medicines to Sudan. There are three focus reasons for India, and that is South Asia, Africa, and also Pacific region. So with all those details, I think it's really relevant for us, important for us to discuss the development policy of India, because that should not be limited only to policy circles, but within the academic circles also, as what kind of global South perspective we are bringing in development aid. We discuss a lot about the European development policy, but what about the Indian development policy? How it is different from the development approaches of these countries? What new we are bringing to the table, and what is our understanding as a global South country to the development approach of the world? So these are very important issues, and I'm thankful to the organizers for actually thinking through and bringing this topic for this young conference. So today, as Stuti told me, that we have only 2 speakers, so we have a little bit more time for a discussion. So let me start with the first speaker, Dev Mishra. Dev is from Department of Political Science and Public Administration from Har Singh Gaur Vishwavidyalaya, Sagar. So, Dev.
Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity. So my topic is development cooperation in India's foreign policy, shaping a global role in Amrit Kaal. So development cooperation has become a defining pillar of India's foreign policy, particularly during the transformative era of Amrit Kaal, which envisions the nation's ascent as a global leader by its centenary of independence in 2047. This paper explores how India's foreign policy is evolving through the development cooperation and partnerships in the different parts of the world, allowing it to navigate an increasingly multipolar and complex geopolitical landscape. It examines India's balancing act between economic growth and the development cooperation with the partner countries, while reinforcing its leadership in multilateral organizations like the United Nations, G20, BRICS, and the Quad. A key focus of this study is India's expanding role in foreign policy and development cooperation, which has become a critical instrument for strengthening bilateral and regional partnerships. Through initiatives such as development partnership and platforms like India-Africa Forum Summit, International Solar Alliance, and Global South Cooperation, India is leveraging its economic, technological, and humanitarian outreach to enhance its global influence. Additionally, the paper also analyzes the challenges and opportunities shaping India's pursuit of strategic autonomy as well, including energy security, defense modernization, economic resilience, and geopolitical constraints as well. Special emphasis is placed on India's growing influence in the global issues and its use of soft power through cultural, civilizational, and educational diplomacy. Development cooperation is a collaborative effort between countries to support development among countries. India's development cooperation has emerged as a key player of its foreign policy, reflecting its aspirations to be a global leader in the 21st century. From its early post-independence year as a recipient of foreign aid to become a significant provider of development assistance, India's approach has been distinct from traditional donor-driven models. Rooted in the principles of South-South cooperation, mutual benefit, and respect for sovereignty, India's development partnership prioritizes capacity building, infrastructure development, and technology transfer rather than creating economic dependencies. India's development cooperation has deep historical roots dating back to ancient time when it engaged in cultural, economic, and knowledge exchanges with its neighbor and beyond. Over the decades, India's development cooperation has evolved to align with its geopolitical and economic interests. Through programs like Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation, concessional line of credits, and regional connectivity initiatives, India has strengthened its influence in South Asia, Africa, Latin America, and the Indo-Pacific. Additionally, initiatives in renewable energy like International Solar Alliance and disaster resilience and digital governance have positioned India as a leader in sustainable development as well. In the context of global crises such as Russia-Ukraine war, India's development cooperation has played a critical role in ensuring food and energy security, providing humanitarian aid and advocating for the global south. As India enters Amrit Kaal, its development strategy will shape its role as global power, reinforcing its vision of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. Recently, in the book written by Dr. Jaishankar, Why Bharat Matters, he writes, and I quote, India's approach to development is mainly human-centric and is marked by respect, diversity, and care for the future and sustainable development. India, the most fundamental principle in cooperation is respecting development partners and is guided by the development priorities, unquote. I have also tried to analyze in this paper that why the India development approach is different from the model of USA and China. India's development cooperation follows a different model compared to them. India's development cooperation emphasizes mutual benefit, capacity building, and sustainability rather than political conditionality of debt-driven infrastructure projects. One of the fundamental differences lies in the principle of mutual benefit as well. The USA provides grants and technical assistance through institutions like USAID, but these funds often come with political conditions related to democracy, human rights, market reforms. And when we come to China, on the other hand, offers large-scale infrastructure financing through Belt and Road initiatives. Its loans have frequently led to debt distress as well. Another distinction is in the infrastructure development. While the USA primarily engages in policy reforms and government aid, China funds large-scale projects using Chinese labor and opaque financial terms. India follows an inclusive, locally driven model. India supported infrastructure projects such as Kaladan multimodal transit project in Myanmar and Chabahar port in Iran prioritizes local employment, transparency, and sustainable development. This gives India a unique approach comparing to the model followed by USA and the China. Looking ahead, India's development cooperation strategy in Amrit Kaal must be dynamic, innovative, aligned with emerging global challenges. By integrating technology, sustainability, and inclusive growth, India has the potential to not only redefine South-South cooperation, but also establish itself as a global leader in development democracy. And I would like to conclude by saying that as India moves towards its Amrit Kaal vision, development cooperation will remain central to its global aspirations, balancing strategic autonomy with global responsibility. By integrating technology, sustainability, and inclusive growth, India is not only shaping a new model of global development, but also positioning itself as a leader in the multipolar world order. This shift will not only enhance India's global standing, but also reinforce its long-standing ethos of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family. Thank you.
Thank you, Dev. Excellent presentation. I would say that one point which is very impressive in your presentation is the line that you have used, and I quote, rather than creating economic dependencies. So what we have seen in the development policy of major powers, that it used to come, the development aid used to come with a lot of political conditionalities. And we have also well aware of the fact that how post 1990s also, how Washington consensus directly or indirectly became one of the center points of discussions on development aid, etc. So as I said, that we need to discuss a lot, because we need to understand like how our development approach is very different. And thanks for bringing the foreign minister's idea of how we are human-centric, how we used to develop the capacity of the people. And I think one of the very good examples of that is our work in Afghanistan, where we have contributed almost like 3 billion. And when the development aid of many of countries are being criticized, India's role is very much appreciated, because it has created a lot of things that can be used by the local people, like the dam, the parliament, and many of these things. So thank you very much. We can move to the next speaker now, and that is Adarsh. Adarsh will be speaking on India's foreign policy and development cooperation with Africa, a strategic partnership for sustainable growth. And Adarsh is from Center for Development Studies, University of Allahabad, Prayagraj.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I would like to thank you, the whole team of ICWA, for giving us this privilege to be here and providing such facilities which we have never received yet. Thank you, ma'am. I am Adarsh from Center for Development Studies, University of Allahabad. Today I am going to present my paper on relationship of India and Africa. I choose this topic because the relationship of India and Africa is not new. Africa has been trade partner of India even before the independence. We shared colonialism experience and training of our father of nation, late Mahatma Gandhi, in the field of activism. After independence, we were on the same side under the banner of non-alignment movement, in which India used to provide technical and monetary assistance to African countries. As the time passes, due to richness of Africa in natural resources, global players ran towards African countries. It becomes necessary for India to expand its relation with different African countries. In response, in 2008, India-Africa Forum Summit was conducted in Delhi, in which 14 African countries participated. It was a meeting of head of nations, diplomats, and important stakeholders and businessmen. After that, in 2011, in Africa, and again in 2015, it was conducted in New Delhi. But this time, the number of participants were 54, means all African countries participated in this summit, and for the first time, and it was most successful summit ever. In that summit, Narendra Modi made a statement that 2/3 of India and 2/3 of Africa is under the age of 35 years. And if the future belongs to the youth, then this country, that is India and Africa, then this century is ours to shape and build. The key initiatives of this summit was trade facilitation, means simplifying trade procedures, reducing non-tariff barriers, and boost bilateral trades. Investment promotions, encouraging Indian companies to invest in Africa, and providing incentives and reducing risks. Sectoral focus was identifying and prioritizing sectors with high growth potentials such as agriculture, manufacturing, renewable energy, and healthcare. Regional integration, supporting Africa's regional integration efforts such as African Continental Free Trade Area to create larger market and economies of scale. Objectives of the IAFS means India Africa Forum Summit. India and Africa share knowledge and best practice in areas such as agriculture, healthcare, and technology. For example, India's green revolution experience is beneficiary for the Africa. The India Africa Forum Summit was established with a clear set of objectives aimed at strengthening the partnership between India and African continent. These objectives are enhancing political cooperation. First one is global issue. India and Africa collaborate on global platforms such as United Nations, World Trade Organizations, and climate change negotiations. They advocate for reforms in global governance structure, including the expansion of UN Security Council to ensure greater representation of developing countries. Next is peace and security. The IFS promotes cooperation in addressing regional and global security challenges, including terrorism, piracy, and conflict resolution. India has contributed to peacekeeping missions in Africa, deploying troops to countries like Sudan and Democratic Republic of Congo. Diplomatic engagement. The summit provides a platform for high-level diplomatic engagements, enabling leaders to discuss bilateral and multilateral issues. Next is promoting economic and trade relations. In trade expansion, IFS aims to increase bilateral trade by identifying new opportunities and addressing trade barriers. For example, India exports pharmaceuticals, machinery, and vehicles to Africa while importing crude oil, gold, and agricultural products. Investment in key sectors. Indian companies are encouraged to invest in the sectors such as telecommunication, energy, agriculture, and manufacturing. Notable examples include Bharti Airtel Telecom operations in Africa and ONGC Videsh investment in oil and gas exploration. Infrastructure development. India provides line of credit to African countries for manufacturing projects such as roads, railways, and power plants. These projects aim to address Africa's infrastructure deficit and support economic growth. Capacity building. The IAFS emphasizes capacity building through training programs and technical assistance. For example, India has trained African professionals in area of IT, healthcare, and agriculture under the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation, that is ITEC. Next is strengthening cultural and people-to-people ties. By educational exchange, India offers a scholarship to African students through programs like Indian Council for Cultural Relations. African students pursue higher education in Indian institutions, particularly in the field such as medicine, engineering, and management. Cultural festivals. The IFS promotes cultural exchange through events such as India-Africa Cultural Festival, which showcase the rich culture heritage of both regions. Indian cultural centers. India has established cultural centers in African countries to promote Indian art, music, dance, and language. These centers serve as a hub for cultural diplomacy and engagement. Diaspora engagement. The Indian diaspora in Africa plays a vital role in strengthening ties. The IFS encourages diaspora communities to contribute to the development of their host countries while maintaining cultural connection with India. Next is addressing shared challenges. First one is poverty alleviation. India and Africa collaborate on poverty reduction strategies focusing on inclusive growth and sustainable development. India's experience in implementing poverty alleviation programs such as Manrega serves as a model for the African countries. Healthcare cooperation. The IFS promotes operations in healthcare, particularly in combating diseases like HIV/AIDS, malaria, tuberculosis. India is the major supplier of affordable generic medicines to Africa. The Indian healthcare professionals often provide training and support in African countries. climate change and renewable energy. India and Africa collaborate on climate change mitigation and adaptation strategies. India has supported renewable energy projects in Africa, including solar power plants, wind farms under the International Solar Alliance. Promoting South-South cooperation. Knowledge sharing has been based on the African countries to improve agriculture productivity, and there is a joint venture between India and African businesses, particularly in the sectors such as manufacturing, mining, and services. These ventures create jobs, transfer technology, and promote economic growth. Multilateral engagement. India and Africa collaborate in multilateral forums such as G77, NAM, BRICS, and now G20, supporting Africa's development agenda. The IFS supports Africa's industrialization efforts by promoting investment in manufacturing and infrastructure. India's experience in developing small and medium enterprises is particularly relevant for Africa. Agricultural development. Agriculture is the key focus area given its importance for food security and livelihood. India has supported agriculture projects in Africa, including the establishment of agricultural training centers and the supply of farm equipment. Digital transformation. The IFS promotes digital transformation in Africa through initiatives such as Pan America e-Network, which provides tele-education, telemedicine services. India's expertise in IT and digital technologies is leveraged to support Africa's digital economy. Now the achievements of the IFS. Strengthening political and diplomatic ties. The IFS has played a pivotal role in enhancing political dialogue and diplomatic engagements between India and African nations. Key achievements include high-level engagement. The summit has brought together heads of the state and governments from India and African countries, fostering high-level political dialogue. This has strengthened mutual trust and understanding, enabling both sides to align their positions on global issues. Global advocacy and peacekeeping and security cooperation. India has been a significant contributor to UN peacekeeping missions in Africa, deploying troops to conflict zones such as Sudan and Congo. This has reinforced India's commitment to peace and stability in Africa. Boosting economic and trade relations. Growth in bilateral trade. Trade between India and Africa has grown substantially, reaching $62.66 billion in 2018-19. India exports pharmaceuticals, machinery, vehicles, and refined petroleum products to Africa, while importing crude oil, gold, and agricultural products. Indian investment in Africa. Indian companies have made significant investment in Africa, as Bharti Airtel operates in 14 African countries, providing affordable mobile and internet services. ONGC Videsh has made in oil and gas exploration in countries like Sudan and Mozambique. Tata Group and Mahindra has established manufacturing units in Africa, creating jobs and transferring technology. Line of credit. India has extended $12 billion in line of credit to African countries for infrastructure projects including roads, railways, power plants, and irrigation system. The Ethiopia-Djibouti railway funded by India, and the rural electrification projects in Mozambique, which has brought electricity to remote areas. Advancing development assistance. Pan-Africa e-Network. India-Africa Institute of Agriculture and Rural Development, established in Malawi. This institute offers training program in agriculture and rural development, helping African countries improve food security and livelihood. Humanitarian assistance. India has provided emergency relief to African countries affected by natural disasters and conflicts. For example, India has sent medical supplies and food to the Ebola-affected countries in the West Africa in 2014 and in the coronavirus also. Promoting cultural and people-to-people ties. This includes educational scholarship, cultural festivals, Indian cultural centers, diaspora engagement. Addressing shared challenges. Climate change cooperation. India and Africa have collaborated on climate change mitigation and adoption strategies. India has supported renewable energy projects in Africa, including solar power plants, etc. Uh, Challenges and criticism. While the India-Africa Forum Summit has achieved significant milestone, it also faces several challenges and criticism. These issues stem from implementation gaps to resource constraints, coordination difficulties, and concerns about the nature of India's engagement in the Africa. First one is implementation gap. One of the most significant challenges facing IFS is the delay in implementing projects and commitment made during the summit. These key issues are bureaucratic hurdles. Both India and Africa countries often face bureaucratic delays in approving and executing projects. For example, the disbursement of funds under the India's line of credit has been slow due to the complex administration procedures. Logistic challenges. Infrastructure projects such as roads, railways, power plants often face logistic challenges and including land acquisition issues, environmental clearance, and supply chain disruptions. Resource constraints. Both India and Africa nations face resource constraints that hinders the effective execution of the development projects, which include financial limitations. India's financial commitment, while substantial, are often insufficient to meet the vast development needs of Africa. For instance, the $10 billion line of credit announced during the 2015 IFS is spread across multiple countries and sectors, limiting its impact. Technical capacity. Many African countries lack the technical expertise to effectively implement large-scale projects. This has resulted in delays and suboptimal outcomes, particularly in sectors like infrastructure and energy. Coordination issue. Diverse needs and priorities. With 54 countries in Africa, each with its own uniqueness and needs and priorities, it is challenging to design and implement projects that benefit all stakeholders. For example, landlocked countries may prioritize infrastructure development, while coastal nations may focus on maritime security. It is also criticized that the India's effort in the African countries is the neo-colonialism. Resource extraction. India's investment in Africa's mining and energy sectors have been criticized for prioritizing profits over environmental and social concerns. For example, Indian companies involved in the coal mining in South Africa have faced allegations of environmental degradation and poor labor practice. Unequal partnership. Critics argue that the benefits of the India-Africa cooperation are not evenly distributed. While Indian companies gain access to African natural resources and markets, African countries often receive limited value addition and technology transfer. Lack of local involvement. Some projects have been criticized for not involving local communities in the planning and implementation process. This has led to the lack of ownership and sustainability. Competition from the other players. India faces stiff competition from other global players such as China, United States, and European Union, which have also increased their engagement in Africa. China's dominance. China Belt and Road initiatives and extensive investment in the Africa have overshadowed India's effort. China's ability to offer large-scale financial and infrastructure development has made it a preferred partner for many African countries. The United States and European Unions have also ramped up their engagement in Africa, particularly in areas like security, governance, and trade. This has created a competition environment for India. Yes, sir. The IFS could focus on deepening economic and trade relations to unlock the full potential of market of both India and African nations. The motto of IFS should not be limited to government, it should be often for businessmen and other players, so that it will be real people to people tie. The MOU should not be limited to the some priority list. It should include every aspect of life. The future of the India-Africa Forum Summit is bright, with immense potential for collaboration in economic, social, and strategic domain. By focusing on mutual growth, sustainable development, and addressing global challenges, India and Africa can build a robust partnership that benefits both regions. Thank you.
Thank you, Adarsh, for a very detailed presentation on India, Africa, and what different kind of engagement we are in with African countries. During the COVID crisis, India has given almost like 150 metric tons of medicines to 25 African countries. I'm forgetting the name, sorry, but there's a German scholar, a very young German scholar, who had done a comparative study of India's approach towards Africa and China's approach toward Africa. He was there in African countries and collected a lot of data and came up with the conclusion that there's a lot of appreciation for India's approach. In fact, a lot of African countries and government want India to work more in Africa than China, because the way they have done things, there's not a lot of appreciation of that. So that's bring to an end to our discussions. Now the floor is open for Q&A. Please, please.
Thank you. This session on development partnership is very important. When we were curating the conference, so we said, what is it that is important when you are talking of India on the rise? India on the rise in the Amrit Kaal. So, just few days ago, there was a book discussion on the idea of order of the Central and East European countries, which I participated in. And it is a book that has been written by ICWA. Now, as a practitioner, I know that the Central and the East European countries, I'm just giving you an example, they are a lazy lot. They are complacent, and in international relations, they are not ready to take up responsibilities or make contribution. Why? And this is not as if they are not capable. They are very capable. And they have the technology, they have the human resources, they have the skills and everything. They can contribute. So I made an appeal through that book discussion to the Central and East European countries to come out loud and clear. If a new world order is going to emerge, if there are so many geopolitical shifts that are taking place, you also have to make your own contribution. Everybody has to. So when India is on the rise, what is our contribution? As EM said, we have to think, what can we contribute? So in fact, in that Central and East European book discussion, I told them that, you are privileged. You have the best socio-economic parameters. Your health parameters are so good. You are the privileged lot of the world. And there is nothing wrong in being privileged, but you also have to be giving. Now, when we were curating this conference, we said, how can India be giving? So India can be giving as a development partner. India can be giving as a net security provider. I will look after you. Okay, so I will provide you with infrastructure. And this is while we are a developing country, while we have constraints on our own resources, while there is significant poverty in our country. So we are doing this balancing act of economically growing, being poor, trying to provide, trying to give, take on responsibility. So, it is in this context that we decided on these two sessions, one as a net security provider and one as a development partner. I just wanted to give you that as a background. Now, as a development partner, we have published, ICWA has published 2 books. One is Locating India in the Global Development Assistance Architecture. Now we have the OECD countries, we have US, we have EU, they've been traditional donors, traditional development assistance players. But India, where is India? Now, MEA gives us this figure. I belong to MEA, but they give us this figure of $40 to $45 billion that your development assistance as of date is worth $40 to $45 billion. Okay. Now, there they say Afghanistan $3 billion, Bangladesh $8 billion. Now, this is basically lines of credit and grant. The lines of credit that we give and the grants that we give. And this is basically for infrastructure projects. My point is, what about the contributions that India has been making since independence, despite its own underdevelopment, in human capital of others? For instance, in education. For instance, in medical. Now, in education, we've been doing the capacity building. We've been doing iTech. We've been doing PM announced some years ago 1,000 scholarships to ASEAN countries. So we keep announcing these scholarships, and all these African students, the Iranian students, the Central Asian students who come and study in India, for whom we have started the Study in India portal. So this human capital and the medicine, the pharma, the medical tourism, which I don't like the term, but they come and get treated here, and we welcome them with open arms. And not only that, our pharmaceutical industry is very popular in Russia, in Central Asia, in East European countries, and our, what you call the organic products. They are so popular everywhere. So what we contribute to the human capital is also our development assistance in both in health and education. Why I'm saying this is, there are no studies to quantify this, and there are no studies on this. So I would invite you, you are young minds, even the $40-45 billion that I hear sometimes looks understated to me. We are announcing how much of it is getting operationalized. So we have to, only RIS seems to be doing some studies on this, and not very many people are doing studies on this. And then separately on the human capital, how much are we contributing to the human capital? So this is something I wanted to say. And in the first session, where we discussed the 3 V's, Vishwa Guru, Vishwa Mitra, and Viksit Bharat. So there were two, somebody said, there are they were comparing domestic contradictions and global aspirations. You want to grow, and domestic contradiction, I think you did it. Domestic contradiction is that you are still poor, your industry needs to develop, your manufacturing capacity needs to come up, and technology, you need to be advanced, your human capital needs to get skills, they need to upgrade their skills, etc. So domestic contradictions and global aspirations. And then the second sentence they said was synchronizing domestic and global strategies. Now this is so important. I asked for a study on, I commissioned a study in ICWA on impact of foreign policy on daily lives. Yeah, it was so difficult to find authors to write on that subject. I thought maybe young ones will write. So I finally got a senior academic, very senior, and I got a former diplomat. So I got 2 papers written on this. And eventually it turned out, and what we did our research, that internationally also and nationally also, there is very little research on this topic. So you can give some examples. Petrol prices rise, foreign policy is having an impact on domestic this thing. Border areas, people are not living well, they are moving out, foreign policy is having impact on domestic policies. So you have anecdotal things and so on. But actual studies, so if you have these actual studies, then you will base your policy formulation of synchronizing external strategies with domestic strategies. So I just wanted to bring these points, because you are young scholars, when you are thinking of ideas to write papers, think of these things. And both, the security and the development paradigm is very important to see when we are seeing India as a giver. But converse is also true. When I'm seeing domestically, Development is as important as providing security. Security, somebody mentioned human security today. In fact, somebody said human security is more important than territorial integrity. I think you said it. So somebody mentioned that human security is more important than territorial integrity, and that PM has mentioned that. So these are very important issues. So you can open the floor.
Thank you. I think we have already got a new theme for our next conference,
Yeah.
People and Foreign Policy.
Yes.
and I'm glad you mentioned it, because actually that's one of the issues, like how people look at the foreign policy, particularly in this new age where earlier it was only India, Pakistan that was foreign policy for the people, but now people are discussing China, people are discussing Ukraine, and of course the Trump factor. So thank you very much for your intervention. Now may I request if you have any questions, just questions, identify yourself and very brief. 1, 2. Yes, you. Yeah, Bulbul.
My question is to Mr. Adarsh. Given that India's energy engagement is growing in Africa, for example, the ONGC Videsh investments in Nigeria, and African continent, we have a reliance of about 20% from Africa. So my question is that to what extent can this energy diversification can have implication on India's autonomy in the energy sector, considering that Africa has its own geopolitical risks, and also there is historical and present dominance of West Asia in the global and India's energy markets.
Any other questions? Yeah, please.
My name is Jitendra, research scholar, Department of Political Science, University of Delhi. I have a question to Adarsh Ji. Any role of Indian diaspora to making relationship between India and Africa?
Role of diaspora.
Yeah.
Any other questions? The last one. Yes.
So my question is to Mr. Dey. Like you have spoken about developmental partnerships of India. So like in the recent terms, we have seen like the way India and Russia's defense cooperation India and Russia's relations have evolved. Like in the beginning, it was totally a defense cooperation, and now due to the ongoing circumstances, we are seeing an evolving cooperation more in the field of energy. So do you think that from a traditionally security point of view, now is the relationship moving towards something related to energy?
The question on ONGC Videsh, the Indian investment in the African countries like ONGC Videsh to extract the natural resources, it is estimated that it is 20%. But India is trying to increase it day by day. And it is only then it is bilateral when India is giving something to the Africa and taking something from Africa. So it is matter of pride also for the African countries that they are not getting aid or any type of fund to only develop themselves. They are also giving us to something. There are the competition in the global market, competition from the China, from the USA and other Western countries. But we have met only 3 times till now. And in the coming days, it is possible that India's dependence on the energy on the Africa will also increase. And the question, the role of Indian diaspora in the Indian development. What was the question?
The role of diaspora in India-Africa.
Relation, yeah. There was a family in the South Africa named Gupta brothers. If you read the case study of that, they were running the South Africa for 15 years. They were the Indians. They migrated over there, settled over there. They were a big businessman, and it is said that they have helped India too much in bargaining with the South Africa and other countries of the African continent also. So such relations also impact the foreign policy, the relationships who are in the power to bargain. As in this India-Africa Forum Summit, it is not only the meeting of the head of nations, it is the meeting of businessmen, diplomats, and other stakeholders which may be influenced by the diasporas. Thank you.
Yes, I do think that the India-Russia relations are moving towards multifaceted relationship. I want to give one data that before the Russia-Ukraine war, the trade going on between India and Russia was $8 billion. But after the war, the trade is now about $25 billion. So this certainly shows that the relationship between both the countries are multifaceted. And President Putin and PM Modi both calls the relationship as a special strategic partnership. So this also shows that how important Russia is for India and India is for Russia. So yes, the multifaceted relationship of India and Russia are still evolving.
Adarsh, in your presentation, you discussed about India-Africa relation taking only 2008 India-Africa Forum Summit. But India-Africa cooperation and relation, particularly in development cooperation, if you talk it historically, it way started in 1964 when we moved out. Now, as ma'am just spoke about our cooperation in high-tech sector, where major focus has been capacity building. And that started in 1964. And 2008 is, yes, we kind of institutionalized our partnership where we moved from a political solidarity relationship to a partnership-based engagement. And that's where we started with India-Africa Forum Summit. And what you mentioned here is totally focused on India-Africa Forum Summit. So India is one aspect of it. And development partnership goes before that, way back in 1964 when we started engaging Africa in terms of sharing our development experiences, particularly in capacity building. And when we talk of India-Africa cooperation, capacity building remains the cornerstone of our development partnership with Africa in every sector. I just wanted to.
That's a benefit when we have an Africa expert here. In the room. Yes.
Hello, this is Mukesh from Delhi University. I have a question to you, Adarsh sir. How do you see the historical and cultural relation between Africa and India? Like both experienced colonial rule, and India was a strong supporter of African decolonization. So, your opinion?
Both the countries has, as you said, that experienced the colonialism. Before the independence, a large of Indians were there. They were working over there, either transported by the Britishers or they were going in search of jobs. From that very time, we share the cultures. When in this summit, people from the African countries, head of states comes with their families. We used to showcase our cultures to them, and we also organize their cultural programs in India also. And when our diplomats go to the Africa, there is an exchange of cultures, and there are centers in the African countries to showcase our cultures as singing, dancing, dressing, all things. Thank you.
Thank you. No more questions. We are running short of time. Just a few things that I like to point out here. And I agree what you said in terms of people. There's a lot of goodwill for India, and India has made a lot of impact on lives of number of people in South Asia, in Africa, other places which is not being studied properly. There was a time when people thought that India is not going to survive at the time of independence because we were a poor country. We thought democracy is a problem for a country like India, which is so diversified. We have proved them wrong. And today we are discussing the rise of India and foreign policy. We are conceptualizing our foreign policy in terms of Vishwamitra, the world is one. All of it actually need a lot of academic engagement. This is a time for young scholars and even for us to rethink the foreign policy, to rethink many of the concepts that are being given by the Western countries. Of course, I agree with Atul that there is need for a dialogue, but also need for our own engagement with number of issues. And one of the things is how development policy really worked. It is not merely in terms of the money part. It's also in terms of culture, it's terms of education. And India has done a lot on these front, which is not being discussed much. So I think this is a time for us. In fact, we are also in a way have certain, what you can say, if not a luxury, but at least have something right now where we can discuss many of these things, getting out of our own problems and challenges. So we have a little bit of comfort in terms of India's rise, India's development. There is a comfort for us, and this is a real time for discussing all these things seriously and to making a contribution in the discipline of international relations coming from Global South. And there is a need for more engagement with the scholars from Global South also. And I like the theme, people and foreign policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi, and our scholars for, thank you, Dr. Tripathi, for chairing this session, and to our two scholars for their contribution. With that, we come to an end of this conference. Before we formally close it, may I now request Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, Additional Secretary, ICWA, to kindly hand out the certificates of participation to our speakers. As I call your name, may I request you all to come forward. I call Ms. Abhigya Langel to come forward. She is a research scholar in the Department of National Security Studies, Central University of Jammu. Her interest areas include India's foreign policy, Sino-India relations, historical and contemporary, strategic and security studies in South Asia and Indian Ocean region. Next, I would call on Ms. Deepanita Maria Bag. She is a doctoral student in the Political Science Department at Northeastern Hill University, Shillong, specializing in South and Southeast Asian geopolitics and international relations. I call Ms. I would call Ms. Vidhi Rathore. Ms. Rathore is currently pursuing her doctoral degree at the Department of International Politics, School of International Studies, Central University of Gujarat. Her research interests focus on India's foreign policy and power dynamics in the Indo-Pacific region. I call on Mr. K. Navneet. He is a research scholar enrolled at School of International Relations and Politics, Mahatma Gandhi University, Kottayam, Kerala. His area of research is non-traditional security threat, focusing on climate change, its impact on national security strategy, formation and bilateral cooperation. I would now call on Mr. Uday Nitin Patil. He is a Dr. TMA Pai Fellow and Doctoral Scholar at Department of Geopolitics and International Relations, Manipal Academy of Higher Education. His interest areas include U.S. Grand Strategy, U.S.-China relations, and great power competition in the Indo-Pacific. I would now call on Mr. Dev Mishra. He is currently a doctoral scholar at Dr. Hari Singh Gaur University, Sagar, Madhya Pradesh. His interest areas include politics and international relations. I lastly call on Mr. Adarsh Singh. Mr. Singh is pursuing his PhD from the Center for Development Studies, University of Allahabad, Uttar Pradesh. He has done a certificate course on gender and from Center for Women's Studies at the University of Allahabad. Thank you very much, ma'am. On behalf of the Indian Council of World Affairs, I would like to express our gratitude to Dr. Atul Mishra, Captain of the Indian Navy Yogendra Sharma, and Dr. Dhananjay Tripathi for taking time out from their busy schedule to not only chair our technical sessions, but also to provide our scholars with very valuable suggestions for the research and studies. I also thank Ms. Nutan Kapoor Mahawar, ASICW, and Dr. Nivedita Ray, Director Research, ICWA, along with all my colleagues and in the research faculty and staff for their support in making this conference possible. Last but not the least, I take this opportunity to thank our participating scholars who have traveled from all across India to take part in this conference, and to the members of the audience who have actively participated in our deliberations. Thank you all. With this, we conclude the conference. Please join us for lunch in the foyer.